That last bite of that chocolate brownie, and yeah, I have to pull it away from Commissioner Glassman's fingers here. Everybody for participating in the 2024 goal setting session of the City Commission. I want to thank certainly the members of the City Commission all being here today, and also our staff members, and also folks from the community. Thank you all for listening, and at the end of the day, we might have an opportunity for you to participate. So this session has taken on different formats over the years, and as John knows, and so today we'll begin the format with city staff talking a little bit about things that have been accomplished since our last goal setting session, what milestones we hope to have achieved and ones we did achieve, as well as the expectations for 2024. And then we'll start with the members of the commission. We'll start with District 1 and go around the table and just talk about our goals for 2024. So, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and members of the community. Though it's very early in the year, it's a great start right now to discuss the budget, discuss priorities, and there are many exciting things to come in 2024 as we look ahead. The Commission, with the support of city staff and the community, has convened today so that we could, again, like you mentioned, Mayor, build consensus in setting city priorities for fiscal year 2025, which starts on October 1st, 2024. This is a very important step in the strategic process, in our budgeting process as well. And I appreciate everyone being here, and especially the members of the community, stakeholders. It's very important for us to get this direction and feedback. So again, our team depends on having strategic goals in place so that we could be resource efficient and cost efficient. And so we're also looking at policy direction, and this is going to help us deliver on the Commission's vision. Again, we're the yachting capital of the world. There's great opportunity here, and this is one way to think about it. The Commission steers the ship, and our team rows. And for the next 5 months, staff is going to work diligently in preparing an operational budget that reflects what you all agree on here today and reflects on what we need to deliver for these strategic priorities. Trust me, the Budget Advisory Board also is working alongside with city staff. We're meeting on a monthly basis and looking at these goals, and also creating a baseline for everything that we will deliver. It's basically our true north is our budget and what you all set here today. And so again, in June, you're going to have a preliminary budget. You will be able to look at line items and also provide feedback even further. And also we're looking at gathering some of that feedback today and this afternoon, which will be the basis for that budget that we prepare in June, and also the conversations that we will have with the BAB. So again, we've designed a workshop to get your creative juices flowing. We're going to have a series of exercises for engagement, and we've created, again, this conducive environment so that we could have meaningful conversations with each other. Once again, we look towards you for your leadership, your guidance, and to help us decide how we should strategically appropriate our limited public resources. I want to mention that again. We look at you so that we can appropriate strategically our limited public resources. And together, we will move forward our city to address the big issues that we are facing in the months and years to come. To the community leaders in the audience today and those that are joining us via Zoom, we want you to get involved in the next days and months ahead. More than ever, the city is making a concerted effort, an intentional effort to emphasize all the opportunities for public engagement. Again, you feel free to join us at the BAB. Feel free to also join us at the next conference meeting, which we will talk about transparency tools, and so that you can be engaged in that development process. And also, it's a very exciting time to be here in Fort Lauderdale. It's with great pleasure of mine to serve this commission, this great city, and I'm excited about today's collaboration. And today, we're going to get started with a short video just to get your juices flowing. And again, please remember this: we are FTL.
The city of Fort Lauderdale, the city you never want to leave. We're the city that builds community, and these aren't just catchphrases. They're words we live by, the vision of who we are and where we want to be. And it all started with community outreach, listening to our neighbors' wants and needs, creating a plan to make that vision a reality.
The city's vision plan was originally adopted in 2013. It was developed by the community for the community. It's what our neighbors said they want Fort Lauderdale to look like in 2035. It's aspirational and paints a dynamic picture of the thriving community we all want to live, work, and play in. This plan established that we must be connected, ready, community, here, prosperous, and united to become the city you never want to leave.
The city's recently adopted 5-year strategic plan connects the community's long-term vision with its day-to-day operation and outlines 5 specific focus areas: public safety, housing, infrastructure, public places, and business growth and support. Within each of these areas of focus, the city has outlined 6 goals to achieve by 2029. 1. Build a safe community that is proactive and responsive to threats. 2. Enable housing options for all income levels. 3. Be a sustainable and resilient community. 4. Facilitate an efficient multimodal transportation network. 5. Build a beautiful and welcoming community. 6. Build a diverse and attractive economy. As we work toward each of these goals, the city will utilize a series of guiding principles focused on customer service, fiscal responsibility, innovation, wise use of support technology, and inclusivity. Each year, the City Commission develops its priorities, which are 1-year work plans that align with the city's strategic plan and work to advance the plan in targeted 1-year increments. It starts in January with a priority setting workshop. Then from March through June, staff works to fund the commission priorities through the budget development process. The proposed budget is presented to the commission in July. The city conducts public hearings and the city adopts the budget in September. In October, we can start implementing plans to make those priorities a reality. Commission priorities are the product of collaboration and prioritization by the City Commission to highlight areas of significant importance. The Commission priorities ensure the city is nimble and prompt in responding to an ever-changing environment. As we move toward these goals, accountability is paramount. Here are some key accomplishments made over the last year on previous Commission priorities. Economic development. This year, nearly $13 million in business incentives and forgivable loans were provided through the Community Redevelopment Agency. Another $16 million is allocated for targeted investments in the coming year. Housing accessibility. The city is addressing housing accessibility through a dual-pronged approach. We've expanded the homeless outreach team, continued providing services through our community court program, and contributed funding to open new, affordable residential housing in downtown. This year, more than $13 million in services are focused on these goals: infrastructure and resilience. Over the course of the past year, the city has made significant strides in improving its infrastructure. We're breaking ground on the new Prospect Lake Clean Water Center. We're improving stormwater infrastructure across the city to address chronic flooding. In all, more than $1 billion is dedicated to new and ongoing projects across the city. Public places. The voter-approved $200 million park bond program continued this year with the construction of Phase 1 projects and progress toward projects in Phase 2. This year, $19 million is dedicated for maintaining the beauty of the city's parks and medians. Public safety. The city broke ground on the long-awaited new state-of-the-art police headquarters. Over the last 2 years, we've added a total of 35 new police officers and 26 positions in the fire department. A new community support unit was also created to address neighborhood concerns. Transportation and traffic. $1.7 million have been allocated in the fiscal year 2024 budget to continue the successful Lauderdale Micro Mover program, offering free micro-transit service. The city also worked to submit 3 projects for surtax funding from Broward County. If funded, these projects will be for completing streets, increasing capacity, and new road construction. Looking ahead, as we progress toward those goals in fiscal year 24, now is the time for the Commission to look to the future. A community survey of neighbors and businesses asked what they'd like to see in the coming year.
I believe the City Commission should continue to make public safety a top priority to meet the growing demands and growth within our community, therefore providing the resources that they need to do their job.
The City of Fort Lauderdale put into place in their strategic plans a focus on the development of affordable housing and homeless services, and we've seen the progress, and we continue to encourage the city to strengthen their efforts.
I believe the Commission should keep our taxes low to give our residents more money to spend in our local businesses.
Those are just a few examples of what you told us you're looking for from the city. Now, the City Commission will set the strategic priorities for fiscal year 25. With your input, together, we are the city you never want to leave. Together, we are FTL.
Nice. Do you want to add anything, Greg, to the video presentation?
No, just wanted to add that we're putting more emphasis in transparency and helping the community understand the process so that everyone can be as engaged as possible. And we're looking forward to Charette's working with the BAB and just getting your input so that we could, again, follow the lead of some of the stakeholders, as you saw in the video, keep taxes low, improve services.
Okay, so it's very clear that each district commissioner certainly has their ear to the ground of their particular neighborhoods and their region of the city, and it's always so important to hear from each one of the commissioners, listening to the ideas and challenges and opportunities that they've shared with their neighborhood constituents. So why don't we begin that process if we could? Did you want to say something?
So, Mayor, we have a short presentation to provide some context, if we may, before
go ahead.
we begin that.
Go ahead, absolutely.
Process. Okay, so Mayor and Commissioners, Laura Reese, Director of Office of Management and Budget, and as you mentioned, the real purpose of this workshop is to hear from you all, but we just put together some really high-level information to set the context before we dive in, and I'll just take a couple minutes.
Take your time.
Please.
Take your time.
Thanks. All right, so just as a reminder, you saw this in the video, The commission priorities this year will advance the strategic plan. You just adopted at the last meeting your strategic plan that begins in 2025. So those are those high level priorities. And so we'll align the priorities you set today with the 5-year strategic plan, and then we'll work towards implementing them in conjunction with the strategic plan. So the commission, as a reminder, sets the goals and priorities. The analogy was the captain of the ship, where you're steering it, and again we're rowing. So we're going to be operationalizing those goals through the annual budget process. So the more specific you can get, the better. But also we'll have to navigate the internal processes. So the implementation timeline was high level reviewed in the video, but today you'll identify the priorities. Next week, staff will kick off the budget process. So we'll meet with all of our internal stakeholders, and we'll start developing the initiatives that align with those priorities. And you'll see the first glimpse of that in the month of June when we bring to you the preliminary budget. We'll bring that right after the Broward County property appraiser gives us the June values. And then there'll be a process by which we give you the proposed budget in July, and it'll be adopted in the month of September. Quick recap of the 2024 priorities: economic development, housing accessibility, infrastructure and resilience, public places, public safety, transportation and traffic. We're reporting back on these initiatives regularly to you, and we really kicked these off October 1st, so just a few months ago, with the new funding that was allocated. Trends in context. The manager asked us to provide some high-level information to inform today's discussion. This is just sort of conceptual, factual information. As you talk through your initiatives, hopefully it'll provide some relevance. So the taxable values have increased in the city. So the economic development initiatives are paying off. Over the past years, the increases in that far right column, 12.24% last year. So that's far above what we've seen our neighboring cities grow in taxable values. A large part of that is net new construction, but also when properties resell, the taxable value goes up. So the largest cost of the city's budget is operating costs or personal services. So we thought we'd share a little bit about how the growth in population and full-time employees has moved over the years. From fiscal year 2013, we've had a 15% increase in our general fund FTEs, mostly in the area of public safety. And the population has grown 14%, so we're pretty much right on target with the percent increase. Other funds, we've had more growth. So we've moved from 668 other fund employees to 952 employees. A large part of that is some of the large infrastructure projects we have. For example, stormwater, we had a very limited program before. Now we have a pretty extensive program of maintaining and enhancing our infrastructure. So we've seen more growth in those areas. Most of our employees are represented by a collective bargaining organization. So we talked to you a lot about that over the past years as we've negotiated those long-term contracts or multi-year contracts. So we're in contract with all of the groups right now. So we're heading into the year. We have a more solid idea of what the personal services costs will be. So only 13% of our employees are not a part of a bargaining group. In terms of the housing market, pretty consistently each year since 2017, there's been 600 to 800 new homes per year. And the 5 to 6,000 or 5 to 6 400,000. I'm trying to home sales. Yeah, I'm trying to. My notes are in my handwriting, which is not so good. So sorry about that. Yeah, there's growth.
Maybe Warren can read it.
Right? Yeah, I think I might need his help. So. Right, exactly. So the price of homes in our city are significantly above the median price of Florida and the United States. So and that also has an impact on the price of rentals. So affordable housing's become a concern in our community. There's been a 16% in rental price over the past year. Median household income, luckily, has also gone up some. Since 2018 to 2022, 37.53% increase in Fort Lauderdale as compared to 24% in Broward County.
What's it nationally? You don't have that. It's okay.
I don't, but we could get that to you. But
Sure, it's below. Okay.
Yeah, I would think it would be below what it's been in South Florida. Prices here are a little higher. So in terms of development, the population's grown, and the number of multifamily units have grown. Single family is pretty flat. Oh, so Yvette is kind of a whiz with the computer. She found the answer to your question, Mayor. So the median income, 74,000. Let me go back so you can see the comparison. So 74,580 is what it is at a national level. So 74,000.
Okay.
580 as compared to 81,544.
So Broward County is below the national level?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Yes. Did you want to go back to that slide? You good? Okay. Sorry.
Well, we are a donor city, so.
Yep. So in terms of development, the increase in population, again, there's been an increase in multifamily units, but the increase in single family units has been very minimal. So we're really seeing our new construction in multifamily areas.
Well, there's really no place. Where do you build single family homes? You have to tear down a home to build a home.
Right.
So that,
What you're seeing is
yeah.
Big Park and so forth.
Right, exactly.
A lot of the older cottages.
Right.
The trend we've seen for the last 20 years.
So we really wouldn't see an increase in single family homes. We can see an increase in new construction,
Right.
but not in terms of actual numbers. The only place we'd ever really see increase would be in multifamily units, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
the data shows. Yep. And tourism. So we're reaching the end of the information to share. The population, and Commissioner Herbst asked about this when we did a public safety comparison earlier. We are still getting you that memo. I'm finalizing it. But the average daily population in the city is more than twice as much as our population. So 186,000 is the population, 565,000 or 580,000 is during a peak period, and 565,000 during the annual.
what is? I don't get. What does the green column represent?
Yeah. So the peak period is
What's peak mean?
So we've defined that as January through April.
Yeah, but when you are you talking about? You're talking about seasonal population?
Yes. So the highest levels we see. So there's a technology tool that allows you to see how populations change during the day by hour and during months. So
Really?
yeah. So this is sharing that data.
That's
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
So the resident population in 2022 was 186, but the actual number of people that might reside here in 2022 is 580.
Yeah, and so that includes visitors and folks who come in to work in the city too.
So it's commuter population, visitor population, and seasonal population.
Correct.
So almost 600,000 people could be in Fort Lauderdale on any given day.
Yep. And so the green is during the peak period, so during those high tourism times, and then the 565 is the average of the whole year.
You know, Mayor, we've talked for up. Apparently now it's tripled.
Right.
That's significant, because we talked, in terms of planning purposes, about looking at a population, a service population, if you will, that's double our actual resident.
Actual
headcount.
resident
But
population.
now it's
It's-
apparently
yeah.
significantly more.
Well,
And
it's-
I don't know if that's
this
being
is-
driven by employment or tourism or a combination of the two.
Well, we never really knew that number, right?
Right.
This is the first time I've actually seen a hard and fast number associated with those concepts. So when people come to me and they say, what's the population of Fort Lauderdale? I never know.
At any given moment, right?
Now I know.
Well, apparently
Yeah.
now you know hour by hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You checking my license plate? What's
Right.
But I think that's critical, Mayor,
Right.
because when we talk about some of the things that we do, for example, our first responders, and we look at that on a per capita basis.
Exactly.
And you realize per capita is irrelevant in terms of the level of staffing that we need to adequately address the public safety needs of our community. Because it's far exceeds, the resident population.
Well, I think that the amount of people we have working in police and fire far exceeds our 186 needs, but in terms of our 580 needs,
But not our 580.
not our
exactly.
580 needs. I mean, we're understaffed.
Right.
Right.
Is that more employed a tourist or?
Music to your ears, Scott.
I don't know that the data shares like if they're
Why they're
tourists
here,
or not.
right,
I
right.
can ask staff to look at that, but we were looking at the
Don't even
data that was compiled. BID uses the data for a lot of their data-driven decision making.
Mr. Mayor, one quick question. For our visitors at home, should we use this when we talk interactively so they could hear us?
Yeah, my mic has been on.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're much more attentive at using it.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you, Laura, for bringing that to our attention because a lot of that population is also east side because of the hotels and all the motels and everything, and the condos. Yeah. So it puts a lot of pressure on that part of of our first responders who, I'm constantly I got a complaint yesterday that somebody called for police attention and, they waited 3 hours and no one showed up. So it's not that they're sitting around doing nothing, that we have so many calls for service. So,
Right.
I mean, we see it on the roads. I mean, you're all getting complaints about traffic, right? So, okay, sorry.
And the other key point that we wanted to sort of just highlight on this slide is of Broward County tourism tax, the city generates 45.2% of the entire county.
45?
45.2, correct.
And I've been saying 30?
Well, it's probably increased over the years too, probably, incremental
More
each year.
importantly, how much
so.
do we get back? How much actually
we
gets
don't
spent here?
we don't get any direct
So that's
money.
the big, you know what, John? That is
Yeah.
that is the multi-million-dollar question, because we do not get back, and we're the donor city. And when we ask for transportation projects, tunnel, and they squirm at us and saying, you can't take all that money for your city, when in fact we contribute half of it. What's the total amount of money that the county expects to generate for is it a 30-year, over 30 years that the 1 cent sales taxes has been implemented? I think
Do you know?
is it 30 years?
Milos?
These 30 years.
Do you want to come up here?
Yeah, these 30 years, I'm just not sure about the amount.
Okay, it's 30 years. The original projection was 16 billion. Okay, let's say it's 16 billion. I know it's more. So 45% of 16 billion. Okay, even a quarter of that.
7 million.
We're
yeah, 7
nowhere
billion.
near the ask that we're entitled to. But
Don't you sit on that board though, Mayor?
no, I don't sit on that.
On the
board.
CVB? The Convention and Visitors Board? Aren't you on that one?
Oh, on the TDC.
TDC,
Yeah. But that's
counting
different.
on you. They're
Yeah, I know.
counting
That's different. Those are different dollars. And they do spend. I mean, they just spent $700,000 for a float in Pasadena, publicizing Fort Lauderdale. So. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
No, that's fine. Actually, good
45%.
conversations. We're hoping that this would add some value.
45%.
Right. And all of this information, just for the good of your team, is in these booklets that we printed for you, as well as the accomplishments at the backside. And we have additional data beyond that.
I now know what the topic is going to be in my next newsletter.
Okay. All right, and so the last thing we wanted to share with you is the highlight of the most recent community survey. We survey our residents as well as our businesses. You heard from a few folks representing those areas on the video. One of our largest strengths that are identified, or one of the places we rank the highest, is the availability of arts and tour and cultural events in the city. So folks are really pleased with that. We rank above the nationwide average there. And really they'd like us to focus in on the sense of overall safety in our community. So that was the area where they really consistently said it's important to them, and it's where we should focus. For the business survey, the three most important factors for keeping a business in Fort Lauderdale based upon the results are local government policies towards businesses, the feeling of safety, and the level of taxation. So those were the three key things. There's some benchmarks as we compare to other cities. Really, as staff, we focus in on where we rank below the national average. So those are the bottom three is affordable housing. We talked a little bit about the context around that and the data we just shared. The availability of jobs that pay a living wage. It looks like Fort Lauderdale's actually doing okay when you look at the median, but it might be the folks on the lower end that we're talking about here. And access to quality education.
When you say cohort, what is that? I know what cohort means, but how are you using it here?
So it's the company that we partner with administers these statistically valid surveys, not just with our city, but with other cities. They partner us with other cities, and they create these cohorts based upon, population density and other factors, so that we can compare ourselves to other cities that are more like us. So, maybe comparing us to Coral Springs wouldn't be good because they're more, residential, but comparing us to maybe a Miami Beach or another beach-based community would be better. So that's what that's intended to do. Okay.
Adding to the conversation with that, when we're talking about the income, the medium, when we look at it overall, we're looking at District 3. Those numbers, income numbers, are so much less than the overall city. And I'm really hoping we could talk about how we can make it a level playing field overall for the city. I'm sure it would have to be something we would have to address with the county, but the formula that's being used when we're talking about affordable housing, sustainable housing, the income in the most areas in District 3, it doesn't even reach what's being outlined on this presentation. So when we move a little further, go in a little deeper, I just want to be able to talk about that a little bit more, because I really feel like anything else, we can make a conversation, have a conversation, to have a consideration where that average median income formula is more strategically addressing District 3, where we can have that true affordable housing opportunity. Thank you.
Good point. Before you move on.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So I remember seeing the results of the survey. These were taken in 2021 or 22?
No, so these are as of December of this
23?
year, of 23.
Okay. So what concerns me is the, in addition to what the Vice Mayor just talked about, the sense of overall safety. I mean, people feel unsafe in our city. I never hear that complaint. And so I'm really, if anything, I hear people saying how happy they feel about the, walking down the street, and no one has ever expressed that. Maybe each of the commissioners can weigh in on that, but also cleanliness and maintenance. People that I see that come here, they compliment on how our medians are well landscaped and how they never see litter on the streets. So again, that number just seems a little off. And then the sense of community among residents. I've never been to a city that has been more community oriented than the city of Fort Lauderdale. With how many of our neighborhood civic associations do we have? Yet people feel the disconnect, that they don't have that sense of community. So that's troubling. Anyway.
If I could add for the public safety conversation, Mayor, at your request, we're working with Bloomberg and Harvard
Right.
to really focus in on that and dig into what safety means to folks in our community
Okay.
and how we can improve it. So hopefully we'll get some more detailed results. Right now we're actually conducting some surveys with residents, with police officers and others to try to get to the bottom of why people aren't feeling safe, and we expect to report to you on these incremental progress.
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
multivariate, Mayor. So, for example, obviously every district is going to be different. For us in District 1, we're seeing something now that is newer to the district, and that's a larger influx of homeless coming into our neighborhoods, whether it's at the Galt, whether it's at Oakland Park and Federal by Target, there are shopping centers over there. And even though we're not seeing significant amounts of crime being committed by the homeless population, it does create a feeling of
insecurity.
unsafe neighborhoods,
Yeah,
right?
insecurity.
And you're seeing this again, particularly up at the Galt now, where we're seeing an influx up there. And I've got a lot of elderly residents that are just very uncomfortable going to the shopping centers over there. They're seeing people sprawled out on the sidewalk. We've gotten calls. I've gone out with actually Lamar Fisher at the reading room up on the Galt, where that's been taken over by a homeless population that is basically utilizing almost every seat that's in there. So again, it's not necessarily actual crime that I think they're all experiencing, at least not in my district, but it's the perception of the unsafe environment that they're in, and people are avoiding, for example, going to Publix. They're avoiding going to the Target shopping center.
Right.
I talked to some of my elderly residents that simply will not go there. And again, it's one of the things I learned a long time ago is that other people's perceptions become your reality, and so that's now become our reality. Is that some of these neighborhoods are less safe because of that. Again, like I said, I'm sure it's different in district. In Warren's district, safety may relate to flooding. And that they don't feel safe driving. So I think it's to Laura's point. I think diving in and trying to get the thought behind the number is challenging.
Yes.
It's funny. It's funny you should say that, John. You don't mind me calling you by John?
Please.
Casual. Okay. Thank you.
But just John.
Before I get into that, Laura,
Only
do we
John,
have,
then.
for this benchmark? I don't see that in our packet. I think this would be very useful. If we don't, could we just?
Yeah.
It's page 9.
Yes.
It looks
So
different.
pages 8 through 10 in your packet.
Oh, this
really
is a blow up.
focus
Yeah, I
in-
see it. It's
Yes.
a blow up
Yeah.
with that little
It's
line.
hard
It
to
made it
read.
bigger.
Right.
Okay,
It's
good.
hard to read in the
And there's
book.
additional information in your packet that we didn't choose to.
Okay. So, John, it's funny you should say that. In my district, it wasn't, but now I'm hearing from all sides, from business, from personal, from the community. Homeless has worked its way up to probably the top thing with public safety in my district. In fact, I just spoke to the chief minutes ago about an issue in my district. So it's become a huge issue with us.
Well, it's because we used to see it concentrated in the downtown area, and we've concentrated our efforts on the downtown homeless population, and we've been effective in addressing it to a certain extent. But one of the things I've seen everywhere across the country that's tried to address the homeless population is solving it is virtually impossible. And what tends to wind up happening is you merely disperse it to other areas. So you don't have the concentration, say, at Stranahan Park that we had, but now it's in all of our neighborhoods. And so you're seeing it in yours, it's more into Pam's, it's you're seeing it at various parts of District 2 and District 1. So I think, and again, these are, my neighbors up there are telling me that they're starting to see a larger number of homeless than we've ever seen, but that mirrors what's going on nationally. So, homelessness is exploding throughout the country, and so we're not unique, right? There's 87,000 local governments in the United States. We're no different than anybody else in terms of the challenges that we experience, and so it's a combination of our effectiveness of getting them out of downtown, but the overall growth in the population.
Just looking at these benchmarks, just want to say thank you for the way you have presented this, and you all are, it's a common statement with me regarding the surveys and how they are presented and how they are available for the citywide, because they're still those areas that, my area, District 3, that have challenges at times with knowing that the survey is available and to be able to respond to the survey. So looking at some of the categories, there's some ones that I see, in a sense, they do align with what I would say is what needs to be addressed a little bit more. Now, depending on the safety, that is definitely an issue in District 3. Gun violence, we are dealing with that on a daily issue, on daily, just completely every day we're hearing about an incident. And that goes back to what we have began to address by adding additional police, recruiting, adding more to the force, but we do need to address this with strategic planning, with adding additional manpower that's ready to go. We understand that, we recruit, we have to train, and then you get the manpower. I had a little different take on the resource officers. I was kind of excited that maybe the school board would have went into their own police department, because that would have released some of the officers to come back onto our streets. So that was my comment with that. And I know, it wasn't our decision to make, but I was rooting for that side of the fence. Also, regarding overall cleanliness and the maintenance, that's something I hear all the time. I hear comments like, well, the beach, the sidewalks are pressure cleaned every day. It's a daily regimen that goes on. Why don't we see that in the Riverland, the Melrose Parks, the Lauderdale Manors area? So when you say you have 42%, I think that number would be a little different if the survey was actually inclusive of those neighbors in my district as well. So with this, understanding that we're working from the data that was received, but this is it's a benchmark, but it is not accurate. And I don't want us to walk away and say we're in a good alignment when there's so much that we need to address and take action with. So all those things are areas I'm going to be putting some priority on and hoping to get the funding with.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Oh, yes,
thank
Steve,
you.
yes,
I just want to add to the conversation. So I actually like the information in Exhibit 2, page 10 of 27, because it gets into the weeds more than just the benchmarks.
Okay.
So if you look at that page, you get to see a lot more information, and I just wanted to touch on a couple of these things. First of all, though, page 10 of 27 on Exhibit 2.
Have we gotten there yet?
We're not. That's not in the presentation. So
Well,
that would be the right.
Well, it's in one of our exhibits.
Yeah. So
And
I
it
think
deals
he's
with
wondering
these
if we're going
issues.
to that next, and we're not.
Yeah, so I want to just add to the conversation because I think it's important. First of all, so to touch on the Vice Mayor's point, it says 824 neighbors were surveyed between July and September. Do we know by which district? Do we know where those responses came from?
We do. I don't have this published. They tried to have a similar number in each district,
Okay.
Except for District 3 was a little bit less than the remaining
I
districts.
think it's important to know where these
Right.
responses are coming from.
Exactly.
Out of 824 neighbors that were surveyed. And was it just, how were the 824 chosen? And did the survey go out to thousands of people and only 824 responded? I just would like to know that eventually. But if you look at some of those, and I want to just touch on some of the other items. If you look at, we've mentioned some things like sense of overall safety, sense of community. We mentioned the streets. Getting around by public transportation, only 34% are positive in our city. This is interesting to me, the ability for residents to give input, only 32%. And yet we have so many workshops and hearings, and Council of Civic Associations does so much, and each of the neighborhoods have very active associations. So I'm a little surprised at that number as well. But look at availability of jobs that pay a living wage. Only 21% are positive. We've talked about affordable housing. Only 15% are positive about the availability of affordable housing. And only 14% are positive about our efforts to address homelessness. And we just had a really detailed presentation about that. We are doing a lot, but yet for some reason the perception is that we're not doing a lot. So I don't know if that's education. I don't know if it's just being more,
It's
more
messaging,
present.
getting the
Exactly,
message out.
exactly. So there are definitely disconnects here that I think that we have to, figure out. Even access to quality education. And I know we have a very reinvigorated education advisory board now, and I know that we do need to replace our chief education officer. But look at the education, access to quality education. Only 37% felt positive. So I think that we do have to look at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, at least 9 of these. And some of these are on here that are not on the benchmarks, but I think that we have to really look at them and figure out, maybe just go a little bit deeper into the weeds on this. Thank you.
Anybody else from the commission? Greg, do you have any comments?
No, certainly. With respect to public safety, public safety is paramount. We were discussing briefly prior to this meeting, the police chief. I wanted to ask if the police chief can come up and give some perspectives on what he's doing, and hopefully look at this same survey next year and see if those are on target. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Schultz, Police Chief. Currently, and I discussed this briefly with the Vice Mayor, we engaged immediately when I took office in November in a discussion regarding violent crime and reduction and gun violence. December 1st, internally, we took on an action plan, and then just before that, I called in our local, state, and federal partners and asked them to assist us. Starting January 1st and for the next 90 days, we have a very aggressive action plan to address all of that. I'm going to set a meeting with the Vice Mayor next week or the week after to show her our advancements, and we're already making progress. So this will be a focus now, 90 days, and well beyond after that. I'll be happy to take questions. Do you have any?
Any questions of our police chief? There will be, but.
Yeah, just one question. You mentioned state and local. If you can identify who we're talking about, it's a part of this 90-day initiative.
So, yes, currently we have Broward Sheriff's Office, ATF, Marshals, and FBI statistics and analysts are assisting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I also want to add that parallel to the chief's efforts, we're looking also at using some best practices. Laura is working with Bloomberg to gain some insight as to how we can get more public safety. Laura, you want to share some of the things you're doing with Bloomberg?
Yeah. So
So before you do that, let me just tell everybody what Bloomberg is.
Absolutely.
Okay. So. This past year, I was invited to participate with 40 other mayors from around the world through an initiative paid for by Bloomberg, Harvard Philanthropies. And what it was a 4-day intensive, basically a seminar for 4 days, which we learned about best practices through case studies. How we would we were presented a problem, and then we were asked to really participate in the discussion on how to solve that problem. So, it was a great networking. I met a lot of people from all over the country and around the world, but at the same time, they engaged city staff. It wasn't just the mayor, it was also city staff. And by engaging city staff, the Bloomberg folks say, well, pick a specific topic that you would like to be really granular on. Just try to go deep into something that your city wants to address. And our city staff picked up on this particular one. There were other things too that we had asked about, like data collection and technologies, but this was the one thing that I think you all agreed upon that they wanted to focus on. And so it's in that context that Laura is going to be discussing this.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So the mayor explained a lot of it. So the mayor and the manager did that really high-level work with Bloomberg and Harvard, and they brought it back the opportunity to have really free consulting with these groups for the city. And the most pressing issue, as identified by the commission and by the staff, was public safety, or the sense of safety in our community. So this is an intensive process that we're going through with multidisciplinary. So we have folks from neighbor support, people from police. We have, Office of Management and Budget, Department of Sustainable Development. They're bringing in their code folks to, address certain concerns. And we're all working together to figure out from the community what the real issue is related to safety or issues. And then as a team, we're going to work with Bloomberg and Harvard to be innovative in terms of how we address those concerns. And we'll bring back recommendations to the commission in terms of a path to move forward. And the nice thing is it does have really in-depth community participation. We're interviewing folks from different businesses, police officers. I'm like drawing a blank, but we like whiteboarded it and came up with all the different groups we have to talk to. And we're conducting like hour-long interviews with these different groups, and we're summarizing it, and we'll bring back some really good information. It's been a rewarding process, but also really time intensive. So we're digging in on that issue.
Yeah, it started out just in those few days in New York, but then it's every month, sometimes it's every couple of weeks. We have Zoom meetings.
Every week, yeah.
Yeah, now it's every week. And these are mandatory, and it's great. I think we're learning a lot, and I'm glad you're engaged in it also, because I hope to see some results. Because listening to the commissioners, I think that there's some opportunities here for improvement. So let's see what we can learn from other cities as well.
Yep. And so with that actually concludes our presentation. And so this is where we turn it back to the commission to share with us. My team will be taking notes, and when we take a break, then we'll put together what we think we heard from you with all of the key themes and get some input back, what we got right, what we didn't get right.
Okay. So. Any questions of Laura right now before we begin the individual commission process? None other? Okay. So, John, you want to begin the discussion?
Thank you, Mayor. So I really think we can break this down for me into two things. So one is what I consider district-specific, and the other is more citywide. And then to start with that, so my feelings are kind of echoed by what I see in the community survey results. So if we go and look at those areas where we're not performing well, these are the same things that I'm hearing about from folks throughout the city, district specific, but also just in other folks I talk to, business community and so forth. And you see where we're doing the worst. It's our efforts to address homelessness. And so again, I'm very pragmatic about this. I don't think this is going to happen, certainly not in my lifetime. I'm fond of using the expression that there were beggars on the steps of the temple when Christ was there, and we haven't solved for poverty and homelessness in 2,000 years. It's not going to happen during my terms of office. So, but I would like to see us make progress, and I think that's really our goal. We've had a number of issues in the district, and we've had our homeless outreach team, which has done a great job. I mean, I have nothing but the utmost respect for the folks that are working on trying to deal with our vulnerable population. It's clearly, though, there's more that can be done, and it's unfortunate, and this from all the years that you've been working in dealing with this. This is really the county's issue as a social service provider, but when there's a vacuum, leadership has to step in, and that's what we as a city have been doing now for years, and I think we just have to continue to focus on that.
We have no choice.
We have no choice. We have no choice. It's our neighbors, it's our neighborhoods, it's our community that is feeling the impact of this, and we can't simply step aside and say it's the county's problem, because it's not. It's everybody's problem. And I know we're working with members of the faith-based community, and that's been both good and bad. The churches that are following their mission of charitable care to the poor, I fully embrace and support that. But at the same time, that's also one of the things that's bringing some of the homeless population into my neighborhoods are some of these feeding programs. So again, we're trying to work with some of these pastors and make sure that when folks come to the neighborhood that they do disperse when they're done with their program, and don't just stay centralized in those couple of blocks right around those locations. Yep. Yep. Well, we've got drugs, we've got prostitution, we've got a lot of problems. Our police officers know where our hotspots are, and they stop by multiple times a day, but it's never enough. Candidly, from the folks that have to live with this, on a daily basis. So I think that's an area where we have to continue to focus our resources and our efforts. And that ties into the other area of public safety. And it goes back to those numbers we saw about our actual daytime population and the level of service that we have to respond to the needs of that larger community. And so I've always been a strong supporter of public safety. I want to continue to focus a lot of our efforts on that. I've always said that I'm a very nuts and bolts kind of guy. I believe the basic core mission of government starts with public safety and then works its way out to everything else. And so I want to make sure that we continue to focus on that. Some of the other things that, again, just kind of district specific is getting Lockhart Park done. That's critically important to us up here. We're looking at some other opportunities to expand parks.
Do you have a mediation meeting scheduled?
We are in the process of scheduling that with Jack Seiler to try and move that forward. And I know we also are getting ready to present our 60% design, so I think that'll be coming February. So we can bring back, so we'll bring that back to the commission for y'all to review. And, again, it ties into what we've seen at the 30% design stage. It's now just a matter of looking at, some of the conditions of the site, from an environmental perspective and so forth. So the design has not changed. It's merely now putting, more precision to what we've been doing. And so we're definitely excited about moving that forward. We have ongoing problems on the transportation side. Bayview, where we did the redundant sewer pipe, and then we did this large sidewalk project over there in coordination with FDOT. Unfortunately, the condition of that roadway has not met the expectations of the community. If you've ever driven up and down there, we've got constant dips in the road that we fill in, and it's just becoming more and more problematic.
Those sinkholes. Because I have it on 18th Street in Poinsettia Heights, where I live, and every so often there's like this hole develops.
Just appears, yeah. And we fill it in, and it appears again.
And I think it's a sinkhole from the pipe.
Well, so we've had some experiences with that.
Yeah.
We do think some of it's related to the sewer work that was done, and Mancini's been very responsive. So I appreciate how they've come out and addressed a lot of these problems. Some of it relates to the work that was done by the contractors at FDOT. Was using out there, and candidly, you talk to some of the the older residents of Fort Lauderdale, they'll tell you that used to be called Mud Lake. Okay, that was
the ridge. I thought it was Coral Ridge.
Yeah, so Mud Lake.
Mud Lake.
So let's just say that I think we're having some settling of the substrate under there at some point. So and I do think sea level rise is having an impact on that as well. So if you look at Bayview, we're right up against the water over there on many of those canals that come right up to it. So, so continuing to focus on the quality of our roads is something, I think is important throughout the city. We don't have quite the same issues with the number and quality of our sidewalks in District 1 as we do in other parts of the city. But certainly the roadways, I think, is something that we need to focus on. The other thing, which we talked a little bit about in the presentation, is the micromobility, the circuit. That's been very well received. We've expanded the coverage area up to the Galt, so they covered Galt and Lauderdale by the Sea. As you remember, when you were there for that new expansion, you talked with the provider about running down Oakland Park Boulevard over to Target, and I think that's a great idea, and I've been in further conversations with them. I want to be able to run up and down Commercial Boulevard so that we can get over to the two hospitals over there, Imperial Point and Holy Cross, so that my Galt Ocean Mile residents can, hop on Circuit and get over to a doctor's appointment. So we've been having ongoing conversations with that. I know in the West Cypress corridor up here, the uptown area, the businesses are very interested in having a circulator that can bring folks from like the Tri-Rail station over to their businesses up and down. We've got a lot of offices up here, and so being able to move people around, I think, will encourage them to use more public transportation to get here. So again, I think these kinds of things are things that I'd like to continue to see expand, not only in the district, but I think elsewhere in the city. Because I think creating more transportation options is going to be critical, because when we look at that growth in population, those folks have to move around. And the more we can do to get people out of cars, the more we can reduce the number of complaints that you hear, I hear, that I see on Nextdoor all the time. Traffic congestion is something that constantly pops up on my radar. And as we all understand, if we've got, I think the numbers I saw last year, 360,000 people net migration into the state of Florida. Those people have to go somewhere.
1,000 people a day.
1,000 people a day. And I would suspect that South Florida is probably getting a large chunk of that, especially folks coming down from the Northeast. They're not exactly winding up in Panhandle. They tend to find themselves more culturally affinitive to.
They don't go to the villages?
They're not going. Well, they may be going to the villages, but they're not going to Pasco County. They're not going to Marion, Clay, Nassau, Baker, Bradford. No, not happening in large numbers. So they're coming down here, and when they get here, we need to be able to house those folks, and we need to be able to help them move around and not add to the congestion that we have in our city. So I think we got to continue to expand on that. So let's see. So going back in again, focusing on public safety, increasing the number of personnel. You pointed out the non-emergency calls for service are taking longer than we'd like them to take. Certainly longer than the department wants them to take. You know, we're all on board with that. But I think we have. I remember one of the folks telling me I think 40 officers a year just retire out or leave the system. That we just need to replace them.
I know we haven't reached the full complement of 555. I know
Right.
we're still way under.
But a lot of our new hiring, I think, is just to try and keep up with a lot of the baby boomers are retiring, and some of the Gen X that are following right behind them are getting to that point where they're starting to look at retirement. And so, we need to be actively recruiting, not just to increase our head count, which I want to do, but also just to replace the people that are leaving naturally through attrition. So these things are just critically important to maintain, both the quality and quantity of our departments. And then I think the last thing is just I look forward to continuing the conversation about the future of City Hall, and waiting to see what we get out of the workshops and the input from the residents about what they think City Hall and the future of work needs to look like. I think there's a lot more questions than there are answers at this point, but I'm really hoping that we continue to get that feedback, from the community, from the business community, from the residents, and so forth about what they need City Hall for and what they want to see, and then we figure out how we're going to pay for it. The last thing I'll leave, and this is something that I've talked with the city manager about before. So, as we do the groundbreaking today for Prospect, we need to be also planning for the future of GTL. So, a few months
Future
back.
of what?
I'm sorry?
Wastewater.
Wastewater.
Oh, okay,
Right.
sorry.
The other side of water.
Wastewater.
The brown water. We had problems a few months back where the county stopped issuing building permits because we were at capacity.
Right.
Now, city staff worked and did a great job in addressing some of those concerns that the county had, but one of the things that I have heard repeatedly through the years is that we don't look far enough down the road when we're doing our planning. So if we're thinking about things that are on the horizon, increasing the capacity of GTL to meet the growth of our city, I think is going to be important. So I just want us to be.
That's going to be a question. Is it possible to increase capacity there? I know that correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think that the state has certain maximums that we have not yet achieved.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know how that quite works. Tell us a little bit.
I
Greg.
think, I'd spoken to Alan about that, but I think there's a limit that the county has. The state's a higher limit, but this goes not to the plant itself, but what they will allow us to pump.
The county has stepped back and says.
But the state is the one that
It's
limits
the
it.
state.
And I think it's the amount that we could pump
amount of
down.
effluent
There's a
flowing
flow.
through.
That limits. It's not the plant itself,
Right.
but correct.
Well, I don't know.
But it does go to
Well,
efficiency,
let's
though.
let Greg respond.
So
Okay.
there's a couple of things that weigh in with the existing plan. Right now, the approved I&I efforts by the commission will improve through time capacity. Right now, I believe it's anywhere from 20 to 30% of our processed water is just groundwater, right? More than that. So just imagine if we were able to do our I&Is, our infiltration and what is
Infill
it?
and
Infill and
infiltration.
infiltration.
Well, that's been the big problem. All that fresh water is seeping into the pipes
unnecessarily,
and then going into the treatment plant,
Right.
which is taxing its capacity.
Right. If we could get those projects accelerated, then and completed, you will see a much more efficient, much more capacity for that water plant because it's not having to process that groundwater unnecessarily. That's one thing. The other thing is we're looking at how we can expand future, perhaps by having a new water plant in another location and having a dual facility, kind of like what we have.
Which
with
district would like a sewer
Peel
treatment
Dixie,
plant?
right?
Right.
But certainly we have physical constraints where the existing plant is, and making
Yeah, exactly.
making further growth there is
Already had that, no. Not going back.
physically we're constrained there. So those are two factors that can help us get better efficiency.
Well, there's all right. So the I&I,
I&I.
but also, do we know if this particular this particular structure can sustain a larger capacity? And that's a question I don't know if
Alan can comment.
Well, Mr. Mayor, can I just rephrase that? Not necessarily a larger capacity, because then you still have that limit that as you could pump down. More efficiency would probably be a better way, so that way we don't have to pump quite so much into the ground. And the other question that I would ask,
Well, let him answer, because those are all good points. So let's see how they would approach it.
So, Mayor and Commissioners, we haven't released the memo to you yet, but we did just get a letter from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection where they have increased the permit capacity on the plant from 56.5 million gallons per day up to 61.58, about a 5 MGD increase. And we just got that notification this week. So that will buy us more time. We are working on an annual report called the Capacity Analysis Report that we owe to the state, and it looks at a 10-year projection of needs. Right now it says that we have sufficient capacity for at least the next 10 years. We are looking further out.
Based on construction permits?
Based on growth in the city and the communities that we support.
Okay.
So we have enough capacity, permit-wise, to get through the next 10 years. As we're looking at our long-term goals and where the city may be going, we have started looking at, is there room to expand the plant itself? And the limiting factor really is the injection wells that has a capacity of about 93 million gallons per day to inject in the ground. And when you hit the peaks, that's where we have issues. There's not sufficient room there to expand without having to put in additional structures to meet current codes. The physical space isn't there. So that really drives us to, if we're looking long-term, needing to build a new plant at a different location.
So that's exactly why I want us to start talking about this, because if you think just how many years it took from the point that we decided to move forward with Prospect to where we are.
Right.
It's a 10-year planning process to think about, and this buys us, thank you, this buys us a decade to be smart and start doing a couple of things. We're figuring out where it's going to go, because that's going to take a huge amount of community outreach. Second thing is figure out how we're going to pay for it. Start accumulating funding in advance so that we're not hitting our residents with significant rate increases to capture that full cost. So anything that we can do, knowing it's on the horizon, being trying to be a data-driven city, knowing that we've got these issues looming on the horizon, let's make sure that we're planning again more than just 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Do we
down
have
the
any
road.
real estate next to the current
Ho,
treatment
ho,
plant?
ho, ho, ho. I already have one sewer plant
No,
in
no,
my
I'm just saying to
district.
expand. To expand. No, if we had to expand on site.
Maybe into the port.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Deeper into the port. Do we know if we have any real estate that is available to us?
No, Mayor, my understanding from discussion with them is they have plans for all the space in that area. So
Meaning the county?
The county.
But so we don't own any more real estate than is already on the footprint of where this treatment plant currently exists?
No, we don't.
John, you brought up a very good point about that got me thinking. Okay, two questions for you, Colonel Dodd. Number one, how old is the Lowmeyer plant? How old is it?
Commissioner, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Well-
It's probably in the 35 to 40-year range, I think,
And
but
then-
I don't know the exact.
Now, the bigger question is, what's the expected life expectancy of that? Are we getting to end of life or not even close?
No, that plant is actually in much better condition right now. I don't see us needing to replace it anytime in the near future. We've been putting a lot of investments into rehabilitating it and maintaining it. So, and it didn't have the same issues that 5 Ash had. So
Okay.
I think we will have that plant in operation at least through the next 20 to 30 years.
Okay,
So
thank
we
you
need
very
to
much.
supplement, not replace, right?
We
We
need
need
to
to augment
supplement.
the capacity more than we just need to replace the entirety of the facility. Yeah.
Correct.
86.
Oh, so it's younger than most
And
of
that's
us.
why I was wondering if there was expansion capacity there, but I guess there isn't, unless you go up.
So if we need to, but that's a good point, Mayor, because if we want to, and I don't mean to intrude on your district, but just thinking out loud, if we were to try and say want to expand south into the port property, we need to be initiating that dialogue with the county and the port. You know, because again, that'll take us years. As we saw with the joint government campus, anytime we try and do something with another governmental entity, it's a minimum 5-year conversation, and it doesn't always lead to a conclusion.
No, it doesn't.
We have enough SHIT in my district. It's no pun intended.
No,
sorry.
understood,
Yeah.
understood.
If I may add to just for background, prior to '86, there were 8 decentralized plants that provided service.
Oh, is that right?
To the city and the surrounding cities that this plant supports.
Well,
Is any of that land still available from the other?
Well,
eight ones?
we could research where those plants were. And
Well, I'm not sure. Let's not go there right now.
No, this is building awareness of something that is out there. You know, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. Winter is coming. Okay.
Point well taken.
So the last thing I'll leave you with, Mayor, very quickly on this one, because you're talking about the sense of community.
Right.
Right. One of the things that I'm hearing in my neighborhoods, I'm sure you are all in your neighborhoods as well, is the influx of Airbnb. And they're taking over large numbers of the houses as they come on the market. Now, I know we are constrained. The state has preempted our ability to do almost anything in this, but I do know that the number of short-term rentals that are popping up in residential communities is driving some of that loss of sense of community. You know, we've got too many of our residential neighborhoods not zoned for commercial activity are turning into de facto hotels. And they're seeing large numbers of transient residents coming through, you know, coming down here to enjoy the wonderful amenities that we have, but they're not good neighbors, and you don't know your neighbors when it's all corporate owned. So I think that might be driving some of that.
Well, the thing is, there's not one district that isn't suffering from that,
No,
and
absolutely.
and
I
it's
don't
very
think we can do anything about it either. But
well, you know, we've tried,
I know,
obviously, and you know, our hands are tied. I keep telling the folks in the communities that, you know, the state still does not permit us to make any laws that will interfere with the frequency or the duration of vacation rentals. About 10 years ago or less, the city commission voted in some restrictions in terms of, you know, making sure that there were on-site managers or managers within a reasonable distance, and various other rules. We've added more code enforcement people that are available well into the evening. You know, we're doing our best. I don't hear as many complaints as we used to, but there still are complaints. But to your point, more and more properties are being bought up for commercial purposes, and I think to some extent that's what's driving up the market price of a lot of the houses.
I saw a statistic recently that I think 20% of all residential sales are now corporate.
Are now 20%.
20% of all residential sales are corporate.
So
buyers.
you know you know, I know the real estate community, the realtors, you know, love it because, you know, it drives up the demand, but at the same time, it's deteriorating the quality of life in our single-family home neighborhoods, right? And when the state legislature also passed the Live Local law, which allows even further intrusion into our single-family home neighborhoods by allowing ancillary structures to be built in single-family homes, which are only going to be used for vacation rentals. No, there aren't enough mother-in-laws out there to to accommodate these additional structures. It really, you can go up there all day long in Tallahassee and you'll talk to your blue in the face, but they just don't get the message that a lot of these communities the quality of life is being deteriorated by vacation rental industry, and they can keep feeding the coffers of those campaign funds to those legislators, Airbnbs and all the other big corporate entities. But the reality is, it's really not helping our city. But every city in Florida is suffering. I mean, Tampa, Jacksonville, they're all complaining. So, I mean, popularity has a double-edged sword. We create a wonderful destination for so many people that want to come visit here, but at the same time, it also takes away. I mean, I know on the beach, for example, Lauderdale Beach neighborhood, I can think a third of those homes are vacation rentals. I mean, these are $10 million homes. If you own a $10 million home and you're living next to a party house, it's not cool, right? So, your point is well taken. District 2.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And staff, thank you for all of the work and all of the exhibits, and it was really interesting going through everything, so thank you for all of that. I also want to thank all of the District 2 neighborhood associations. We put the word out, and we heard back from all of our neighborhoods. They're very engaged associations, and we put together quite a good list, and I wanted to thank all of those neighborhood presidents in District 2 for responding in such a quick and thorough fashion. It was very helpful. So we have these buckets. A lot of them are very similar to what we've all been talking about today, and also from the past year and the past year before that. But if I look at general buckets, I am looking at public safety, I'm looking at homelessness, I'm looking at traffic management, infrastructure and resilience. And then if I go a little bit deeper into those categories, some interesting things were mentioned in the neighborhoods, and I wanted to just touch on some of those. An interesting concept, several of our neighborhoods in District 2 said they would like to see the concept of master plans for the neighborhoods, just like we do with everything else. We have master plans, but maybe it's time to really look at master plans for the actual neighborhoods themselves.
What would be the mission of each master
plan?
Well,
the topics that came up when I look at all of the information that was sent to me, they're concerned about, like you just mentioned, the Live Local law. They're concerned about neighborhood compatibility. They see a lot of development centered in and around the density of downtown and also the beach, but they are also concerned about how are we planning for smart development, redevelopment, controlled development in all of the neighborhoods as well. Sidewalks comes up all the time on these lists that I'm looking at with regards to the neighborhoods. What's happening there? They want to have more walkability in their neighborhoods. They want more traffic management in their neighborhoods. Someone actually said to me, is there a way that we can get Google Maps and Apple Maps and Waze to stop directing people to cut through neighborhoods all the time if they're looking how to get to places? Interesting idea, but they just see a lot of that, and that's tied to the fact that they're also requesting traffic calming in their neighborhood. So I think there's a lot of issues. There's also, and I've had this conversation with the chief, actually I think that was just yesterday or the day before, about what we're doing in the neighborhoods with everyone getting to know the officers, the police who are working in those neighborhoods, and all of that, because that's also very important as part of the public safety, but also the neighborhoods themselves.
So are you suggesting that the city staff sponsor charrettes in the neighborhoods, the civic associations that are requesting it, like, whatever it may be, Poinsettia Heights, Victoria Park, the ones in your district? You think the neighborhood communities would want to participate in something like that?
Oh, I know that for sure. I've already had meetings with Sailboat Bend, which is our only residential historic district. They are already started that work themselves for master planning for their neighborhood. They've done a lot of work. I met with city staff and the representatives of Sailboat Bend on that. So that's moving along. We had last year, we had discussion about the entertainment districts and the Himmershey district in particular. As you know, that we've had several workshops now with for the Himmershey district, because that's an area that at one time was thriving in a much better way than it is now. It has issues now, and yet with everything that we're seeing coming in and around Himmershey district, especially along Broward Boulevard, it's time to start talking about that neighborhood and how it also ties in to Sailboat Bend. But also, you know, I could go on with these, but each neighborhood has very distinct, you know, wishes and needs and concerns, and they're all relevant and they're all excellent. And you know, I have those lists. What else was a big topic? Obviously, we did talk about the homelessness, and we do have hot spots in District 2 as well. Infrastructure and resilience always makes the list. People are very concerned about what we're doing, again, in their neighborhoods as well, drainage, flooding, and then I even had some input from some of the aisles. You know, we're doing a lot of seawall improvements along the Las Olas Isles, but then people say, well, that's great, and we've seen some good work, like on the Isle of Palms, but then we don't come in and follow up with landscaping and painting, and in other words, we do that job, and then it just looks sort of raw, and we leave it, and we don't really necessarily finish the project in a way that the neighborhood says, well, we're thankful for that seawall improvement, but can't we make this look better? So things like that. Next, City Hall also came up. People want to know what we're doing there, and I'm glad that we have all of those workshops where people are giving their input, but they're very concerned. They want to know, are we demolishing the building? They want to know, how long is it going to sit there boarded up? I mean, I don't know what our plans are, but it's an eyesore.
Between now and August, we should have it demolished.
Okay, thank you. I think that's important, you know, and close to where our city hall is and where it's going to be demolished. I spent some time in the main library the other day. You know, we were talking about homeless and places where people congregate. That's definitely a place where people congregate. As soon as that library is ready to open, that's what's, you know, waiting to go inside. But City Manager, what's going on with the county and the plaza next to the main library? How many years has that plaza looked like that? That is a shame for a core of our downtown area that happens to be in District 2. But what's going on with that plaza?
So yesterday, Kevin Kelleher, Assistant County Administrator, says he's gathering an update for you all. I know that was an inquiry, I think, by another commissioner, I think, or you, Mayor? Yeah. So we're expecting that. We want to know what their timeline is, because it's fluctuating quite a lot.
Okay, good.
Fluctuating.
Fluctuated.
6 years.
Fluctuated.
It's been forever. It's so unsightly.
And you might want to ask about the courthouse building too. When is that coming down?
Excuse me?
The courthouse building.
It's not coming. It's
That's
not coming
District
down.
4. I'm sorry.
No, it's District 2.
No, the courthouse building.
Oh,
No, not the federal
the
courthouse.
federal, not the federal.
No, the state courthouse.
Oh, state. Oh, I don't care. Okay. All right. So moving along right now.
Well, no, since we're talking about taking down unsightly structures,
I'm just joking.
Put that on your list.
I understand. I'm just joking. Okay, so Himmershey revitalization, we talked about that. People like that we are actually rezoning parks. They like that. They want to see more of that. They want to see that continues along, and we make sure that we are protecting those for future generations. Or repair, CPI, okay. Public safety, we talked about that. That makes everybody's list. Traffic management, I mentioned that. Neighborhoods, again, to tie into their master plan needs. I have many neighborhoods in District 2 that want undergrounding. We're almost done with the first one, the Las Olas Isles, those 7 streets. We're done with that when? Can someone tell me when that might actually, where every house is turned on and ready to go?
Commissioner, we have about 260 neighborhoods.
Wait, you have to speak in the microphone.
Commissioner, right now we have about 260 houses already connected. The remainder will be connected over the next month. We should be done by the end of February, and then we'll be doing restoration of the roads and cleanup.
Wow.
Okay, good.
Amazing.
Well, yes.
It only took 50 years, but it's okay.
No, about 13. Mostly when you were district commissioner.
thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so moving right along, again, still to go in District 2, that's Las Olas Isles, which is 7 streets, but I've got 7 aisles, Riviera Isles, Idaho Isles, Sunrise Key, Victoria Park. All those neighborhoods want to get going on underground and utilities. So that's a big project. Some of them have stepped up, said, we'll take on more responsibility if it needs be. But we need to really make sure we're communicating more with these neighborhoods that want to do this project, and it just needs to be happening. I know that we were looking at hiring another person to coordinate all this, but that's important, and again ties into what these neighborhoods want to see happen, whether it's part of a master plan for their neighborhood or not. But they need to see these issues happening. Sailboat Bend, which has some very specific needs because it is our only residential historic district. And again, this might not necessarily be a global issue, but they are really looking for some more financial incentives, and I don't blame them because they do get held to a higher standard when it comes to preserving their homes. If we're going to expect people to preserve historic properties and tie into our status as a certified local government, a CLG, we have got to just step it up to provide incentives and financial assistance. I know over the 6 years that I've been in office, we have done a lot to make it easier for these homeowners with regards to administrative review instead of always having to go to HPB. We've done other things that have helped them. We've cut some costs and fees, which is great, but we just need to keep going for that particular neighborhood. And I've already had meetings about that with staff, what we can do to aesthetically improve that. While I'm talking about aesthetics, I know that it's been mentioned about the maintenance, but I will tell you, Mayor, I actually do hear from folks that want to see us do a better job in landscaping, medians, and streets. I still get complaints from the beach, still lots of sand still from the storms we had back in November. Go along Sunrise and A1A, there's still a ton of sand. That median has a lot of dead plants in it. That's a core median. When you come over that bridge to the
Sunrise?
beach, yes, Sunrise. When you come over that bridge, Sunrise, and I think that might be the most traveled bridge to the beach. I'm not exactly sure. Sunrise, I think, is. But anyway, that needs to be a gateway. That needs to be aesthetically pleasing. There shouldn't be sand all over the roads. Those medians should not be full of dead plants, which they are now, actually. Right on A1A by the hotel, right by the Sonesta. All of those medians are in desperate need of attention. That's an economic engine for our city, and it really should always be looking that way. I have a lot of specific projects on the beach, but I'll get into that with staff later. That's not an issue because I do know that there are a lot of projects that people want to see happen. Really quickly, crime, again, some of the neighborhoods experienced more. We had a little bit of rash of burglaries in Victoria Park. I've talked to the chief. We're okay with that. Again, we've already mentioned traffic. I've mentioned that. Traffic calming, I mentioned that. Sidewalk, okay. Water quality, that has come up a lot on the lists that I've had. Just making sure that we're staying
Drinking
on top.
water or intercoastal
No,
water?
I'm sorry, the waterways. Yes, the waterways. That's become a big issue, especially I have a lot of neighborhoods that have a lot of waterway property, and that is an issue. I know that we did some really good testing areas in Middle River, but we still see that we need to do more there. People are concerned about the diminishing quality of the waterways, so I think that that's something that we need to focus on as well. People are anxious to see Lauderdale get moving. What else? Parking issues around different neighborhoods, lane closures, traffic congestion, better coordination when it comes to so many things that are happening. I got an email the other day, and the person did a great job of detailing all of the things that are happening in the city with the Kinney Tunnel and Federal Highway and construction here and construction there, and basically how it's almost like you have to be navigating through a maze to sometimes get around. And the question was, are we coordinating? Or can we coordinate better so that people can, so that FDOT and the city and any other agencies involved are just making sure that folks are just not finding one obstacle after another as they try to travel through the city. So that was something that came up as well. I think that I've covered everything. Vacation rentals did come up, and I will say that we are having less complaints about that in District 2 than we've ever had before, which is good because I believe that we do have the most number of vacation rental properties in the city. And a lot of the neighborhoods have been really sharing ideas when I have my President's Roundtable. It's a great way for everyone to share, to learn how they can really stay on top of it, work with code, see what's going on. Recently, that noise addition that we did with the vacation rentals, that has helped a lot as well. And I think I pretty much covered the general topics. And as I said, I'll be able to talk to staff about some of the, a little bit more into the weeds. Thank you.
All right. So in order for staff to keep up with us, why don't we just take a little break right now before we begin to District 3 and come back in about, I think we need to take a break, 10 minutes. Yeah. We need a break. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let us resume our meeting, and we'll now turn the table over to Commission District 3 Vice Mayor Pam Beasley Pittman.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I too want to thank the staff for the great presentation that you all shared this afternoon. I don't know what time it is today, but a great job in
TGIF.
Yes, exactly. But giving us an opportunity to even feed off of what you have presented. So thank you for that, first of all. My priorities, I have a nice little list. I kind of feel like
take your time. Take your time with it.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
I need to. Yes. Okay. Of course, overall public safety is an issue. The gun violence that we are experiencing in District 3, and I want to say, I'm hoping that we all realize it's not only a District 3 problem. This is a citywide problem, or is problematic to the whole city. And even the things that all of us are listing here, these are things that are affecting the city overall. So I'm knowing as a great group of colleagues, we'll be able to not only leave it at the district area, but also expand this throughout the whole district. So the whole city, exactly. We talked earlier, the chief, he came over and he explained some of the plans and the action plan that's already in place to address the gun violence. And I've expressed the need for knowing that we need additional manpower overall for the city. There was a time that even Steve mentioned about wanting a district building in a substation in your district. So we know that this is something that is a citywide matter that we should address and definitely consider giving additional fundings to. Attainable and sustainable housing. We talked about that a little bit, and to go back into that conversation I kind of started about understanding when we're talking about the AMI and how the formula that is being used basically dictated by the county. However, I believe that we as a city needs to recognize and be proactive and see how we can get into the game to make sure that there's affordable housing throughout the city. And when you look at District 3 with housing going up, where we have the opportunity where the CRA and fundings are being used, and it's a requirement of 10%. We're really not, when I say 10% of affordable housing being offered in those structures that are going up, it's really not affordable housing. It's more of a workforce type housing that's being afforded. And we want to be able to keep the opportunity for everyone to have affordable housing, regardless of the zip code. So moving forward, I would love for us to, with staff, see how we could address that where it comes with funding, and then also how we address the county to get them to consider having a conversation about making that AMI opportunity for District 3 more crafted for the area. Because when we were looking at that average income of, I believe it was $84,000 or $74,000, no, that's nowhere near what's going on in District 3. So when that formula is being used, it's eliminating the opportunity for affordable housing. So a conversation, and like I said, we can get with staff and open the door to have that conversation with the county, because if I'm correct, they will be the ones who would make that decision, correct?
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Greg, you want to?
Yeah, so certainly the AMI values, right? They're adopted by the county or state.
I thought it was the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and
Well, they use those other statistics.
can you put your mic on?
I believe the county uses those other statistics, but they're the ones that actually publish it.
Okay.
The county publishes
think so.
those AMI numbers. Okay.
Okay.
And so if the city commission would like to do something beyond what's published or what's being, the values that are the thresholds for support, perhaps something to look at is what additional funding mechanisms can become available for those that are in need, that are beyond those thresholds, below those thresholds rather. And if that's something you would like for us to look at, we can certainly do that as well.
So I think this is always it's a double-edged sword. So to your first point, localizing the area median income, I'm not sure how that's going to affect the average, because you just take Fort Lauderdale instead of the whole county. If you just took Fort Lauderdale as a corporate entity, I'm concerned that might swing it higher rather than lower. And but I think, to your point, we should at least see if we can get that number.
Yes.
Let's see what the area median income is for just Fort Lauderdale, the Fort Lauderdale zip codes, and see how that compares to what the AMI is that the county establishes for the entire county. Secondly, we as a commission already adopted that program of trying to incentivize developers once the CRA expires, and even with anywhere in the city, to provide affordable housing based on tax abatements. We've already established that program, and but it doesn't really hit at the core population that you're speaking of,
Exactly.
right? Yet at the same time, how do we find opportunities throughout the city instead of just locating low-income housing in one part of the city? How do we find opportunities throughout the city to be able to accommodate people that are lower income but are still part of the working class, still working? I mean, when I first became an attorney, I was making nothing, right? I ended up living on a cot in a friend's living room for the first year that I was down here because, I didn't have any money. So,
Thank you for giving me the cot back, by the way.
Oh, you.
But I agree. But my request is that we do highlight and put emphasis on the opportunity to have the conversation.
I agree
so
with you,
we can
yeah.
do this because it's unbalanced, and we need to get where it is. Like I love to say, citywide, because I believe that anyone should be able to live anywhere in the city,
right?
And that should be affordable and attainable somewhere throughout the city. So,
and to help that is also to provide job opportunities in areas. So, I understand that we're finally going to get off the ground with that movie studio, which will have training opportunities, job opportunities. I was told today at the groundbreaking that we may have a groundbreaking in March now, so that'll get off the ground. Again, it'll provide several hundred jobs, mostly skilled labor jobs, and these are, giving people an opportunity to earn their way into affordable housing,
Exactly.
is the way to do this, right?
Exactly, I agree. And even, with a little change in the direction with the items that I'm bringing to the table, the academy, the Good Jobs Great City Academy that we, the city, have adopted and we're moving forward to implement. This is a opportunity that I'm asking for, as needed, additional funding to make sure that we're able to get those jobs, get those individuals employed where they can become at a income level where they are able to come out of what's considered and identified as low income. So with that, Good Jobs, Great Cities Academy, I want to see that receive the funding that's needed to make sure it is a success. And I don't want to take the moment here to go into deep details with that, but I will say this. We were at National League of Cities in Washington, D.C., And Lady Biden, First Lady Biden, had explained to us about the infrastructure bill and this Good Jobs, Great City opportunity, this initiative was given out, information was given, and we were there, and I said, we need to take this back to Fort Lauderdale. And I brought it back to the commission. Commissioner said, okay, we can do it. And we did make the application, and we secured that funding or scholarship, you would say, from the federal government. And this is an opportunity where we can present training for labor skills. We're talking about plumbers, electricians, and things that those type of jobs that will begin to elevate also what we need even in our city here. And if I'm not talking out of term, we are looking at the pipelines. We want to address this with the 8th graders, starting with them, single mothers, and then our veterans that come home who does not necessarily have a trade and a skill. So this is a great opportunity. So I want us to look at this for additional funding. Also, our infrastructure. I've heard the other commissioners as well who've spoken, talking about our roadways, the streets. They are deplorable. We need to figure out how we can fix our roadways. John was talking about the boulevard in his community where every 20 feet there's a dip. We see that on 6th Trunk. We see that in Lauderdale Manors, throughout the 15 communities that we have in the district. And what's disappointing to me, I don't think we should be able to turn off of a main boulevard. If you turn off of Broward Boulevard to the north, the roadway should not indicate to you that you are in a specific area. And the roads in our district, it would kind of lead to maybe I'm in a different area of the city.
Right.
So the roads need to be consistent, paved, well kept throughout the city. So the infrastructure pertaining to the roadways. And then also we are working towards taking care of the stormwater project for for Melrose Manors and Melrose Park. We have to continue on that path. We know that we need additional funding, and wherever we can identify those funds, we need to take care of that. And my colleague Warren, we know, and even the other part of the city, but that April flood, it was really what our districts really experienced. So being able to address that type of infrastructure, finding the fundings for it, and making sure that that stays on the top of our radar and our priorities. Broadband connectivity. I'm not going to let this die. I'm going to tell you. And when we're out at events, I was sharing with the mayor, he was saying he's having problems. I said, broadband, you can't connect because of the poor broadband in this area. So this is a issue. And we need to connect with those entities who have been, I even believe, soliciting our city, wanting to bring in the wiring. There's been some conversations, but this is a problem that we need to address. Going back to when we were in the pandemic, the children in the district, because of the lack of adequate connectivity, they were going to parking lots, the library parking lots. They were going to McDonald's, wherever they could get a true connection to be able to do their schoolwork. And then you had those who were not able to do that, so it caused a lack in an ability to receive their education. So from there, I even go to our education, okay? We do know that our chief educational officer, that position is currently open. I want us to make sure that we get another person to fill that position. I don't want to see that position closed out, because it is something, a position that was very productive, and it did exactly what we needed it to do. Just for the conversation, we should know that there's 24 schools in our city. and each of them needs that liaison to make sure that across the city, every one of our young people are receiving the education that's needed. So with that, that we know that that educational liaison is the person that goes and speaks with our public schools, the Broward County Public Schools system, to have those conversations. So we want to make sure that we continue in that direction. So I don't know the conversation. I don't know if it's a consideration to close it out, but my vote, keep it open, make sure we fund that particular role. Also, with that, in the education opportunity, even pertaining to our Education Advisory Board, we need to openly, all of us, recruit to make sure that that board is manned and that we have the voices of our community, that we're able to make sure when the conversations come up that we'll be a part and be at the table, because in District 3, there's conversation about schools that are under-enrolled, that are considered to be closed or repurposed. And the two schools that have been in the conversation are schools that have been legacy schools to the community. So whatever we can do to be a part of that conversation, to make sure that Broward County Public Schools understand that we are not wanting to see those schools repurposed or closed. If we could do how we can collaborate to make sure we get those numbers back up. Okay? Yes.
To that, I know we have a new superintendent, and I haven't met with him yet. I think he's planning to meet with me soon. But, with all due respect to the school board, I don't know if they are truly focused on the level of education that we expect in the city of Fort Lauderdale. I'm going to give you a prime example. Walker Elementary. I remember we sat with the previous superintendent, and Walker was an F school. And he said, we're cleaning out the entire administration there, new teachers, we're going to invest money in the building, we're going to bring that up to an A school. And it's still an F school. And so I don't know what the solution is, but I clearly see there that they do not understand the problem. And so so when I have my turn for remarks, I'm going to talk about what our approach to education in Fort Lauderdale could be.
Okay.
And because I just don't think that all the tax money that we pay into our school board, okay, we're definitely not seeing a return. There should not be one C school in our district, let alone C's, D's, and F's. And especially Walker, which is...
And Walker was... It was an A school.
I know.
It was an A school, the same as North Fork. At one point, they were A schools. They both were magnet schools.
Okay.
So
what happened?
Exactly. So with that, the conversation, being able to have that conversation, we know we're going to have the conversation. And in that conversation, pushing the urgency to make it known that we're not trying to have the schools closed, and whatever, even with collaboration, what we can do to make sure that there's a change and the school stays open. Okay?
Yes.
So when I would love to hear what you're going to add to that conversation.
Okay.
Also going into the fact, talking about food insecurities. Right now, in the center of our district, there is a lack of opportunity to get fresh fruits and vegetables. There are no official food chains, national food chains in the center of Central District. I would hope that we could, I talked with Greg about reaching out to some of the food chains to introduce what would be like pop-up food trucks that would come off of where they could come and my neighbors can come and buy fresh vegetables on the spot. But that would, with the small conversations we've had, it would include some funding from other sources. So if we could have a conversation as to how we, the city, could also address those food insecurities. And this is just, the beginning of a conversation, and see how it can grow and how we could officially address this. And knowing moving forward opportunities for a brick and mortar to come in. But in the meantime, we need to do something, because to see individuals, what breaks my heart is to see early in the morning little kids walking to school, and they've gone into a corner store and they're holding a Pepsi and a bag of chips.
Right.
Okay, not knowing what's offered at the school, but still the fact that they're walking to school with a Coke and a bag of chips. And I think we could do something to try to address
don't
that.
the schools offer free breakfast and free
I don't
lunch
know,
at schools?
I think they do.
I think they do, right?
I don't know the whole process.
Yeah.
It may be a fact. It may be sometimes regulations with who gets it. I don't know, but it's worth the conversation. So,
Vice Mayor, I have
yes.
a question. Sorry to interrupt. Have we had conversations, staff or folks in your district, with a lot of these markets that are around town? I'm thinking right now, for instance, the farmers market at the Las Olas Oceanside Park every week has become a very popular event.
Yes.
And they have all of that. I mean, they have a wide array of goods,
Yes.
but also lots of fresh vegetables, lots of fresh fruits. But have we explored the possibility of people that are already doing markets like that in town, maybe finding a location? I don't know if staff's had conversations or if
We really haven't had the conversation, and this is a great suggestion, because what I thought about with that, because I'm familiar with it, but I was only thinking about community going to the location. You're suggesting that the entity comes into the community. So that's a conversation we can have.
I mean,
but with that pop-up store, pop-up food truck that will offer that, and whatever we need to do to make that happen along with city support.
But maybe staff can talk to Ari and find out all those connections of the folks that are doing these markets at the Las Olas Oceanside Park. Maybe we can just have that conversation about seeing if we can do it elsewhere, that's all.
Okay. All right. I like that idea as well. Our waterways. In the District 3, the New River also runs through District 3 as well. And sometimes when I'm talking to people, they're like, really? Where? But it does. And I like to share, if you're familiar with right at the North Fork Elementary School, and it goes span past Delavo Park. So through that area, the New River is there. And the water monitoring, we were talking about that a little earlier. We need to see the waterway clean. The bacteria levels there are off the charts. I believe 70 is what's considered acceptable. And the last reading, monitoring, testing I received, the email said 470. So we need to do all we can to clean the waterways, because we too want to be able to go on our kayaks and do whatever, enjoy the waterway, and be a part of that opportunity, because we bought our homes there with the ideal to use the waterway, and it needs to be safe. So with that, whatever it takes, that's part of the priorities as well. Nonprofit fundings that include District 3. When we had our budget discussion for the previous fiscal year, you all recall I was very disappointed in what I seen and aired to be a lack of nonprofit fundings coming into the area that included District 3. So what I would like to see when we're talking about moving forward, including those identifying nonprofits that would be able to receive fundings that would also address specific items within also District 3. Also, in regards to our signature events, we still have that conversation with our MLK coming soon is the Six Trunk Festival, our Carter Park Jams, and the Summer Jams. All of these are citywide events, and they are they come in where we need additional fundings. So I would like to see where we could identify additional fundings with staff to say where we need and the dollar amount, because right now we are coming in where we could use additional funding. Last year we came back before the dais and there was a vote and there was an agreement during that cycle to go ahead and fund the additional funds. But what I'm asking is that we can go ahead and increase that amount that's considered to cover the event to a more appropriate funding. I may have gotten to all of it. Okay, we talked about the medium income, and John, you made a statement basically about this being the city that we have to live in, and that's something I believe, and I believe we all agree with. And when we say the city, it's the entire city. We are district commissioners, but everything that we do and we vote on and we conversate about affects us overall. So as a priority, doesn't do anything with money, but as a commission, I would love to see us begin to collaborate more where we understand that it's for everything. Everything that we're bringing is for the city and no district left behind. So that's all that I have at this time.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Sturman.
Usually I'm a few words, but I am going to take a little bit of time here.
Good.
And this is the first time I've sat at this table looking out at the airport, and what a beautiful scene here. It's like a show every few minutes taking off and landing.
Is this where you park your plane?
This is a D1, it's not D4.
Okay.
Just a quick thing, Greg. I was asking Laura, I just don't know where the camera is. I'd like to at least face the audience. Is it over there? Or? Okay. I just want, when we talk, I'd like to face the audience. Hello. Okay.
Don't worry, they'll find you.
I'm going to start out by, I'm going to get into the priorities in just a minute, and then I'm going to comment about a few things that my colleague Pam spoke about. But, we get a lot of press about how we infight and we're snapping at each other. And I just want to say this is a great opportunity to show the world and the community what we're really about. I mean, I want to thank every single one of my colleagues, John, Pam, Steve, Dean. I mean, we're here because we love this community. I mean, we really have the same vision. We want to get things done. And the dialogue going out how we fight each other is, the reality is we agree on most things. And this is a perfect opportunity to show the world how much we do agree and how much we're all uniformly and individually committed to the city, every one of us, and I thank every one of my colleagues. Pam, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that you said. First of all, I guess I could call it the April showers that we had in our district. That might be a good thing. Got me an opportunity to at least work with you and see some of the things that you just talked upon. And it was a great opportunity to work with you. It was such a pleasure. And I did see firsthand I would call it the food chain desert. And I did see that it was a problem in your community. And also, I didn't talk about it in my priorities that much, but education is a priority from the city. And as we've seen the priorities and how it's conceived by the survey, lack of an education does impact quality of life and is something that we do need to focus on a lot. I got my start in public life as vice president of the PTA over 2 decades ago, so I know the importance of education. Okay, as a prelude to some of my colleague comments, just want to say that throughout the whole year, I've gotten feedback from all of my neighborhoods preparing for this particular day, listening to people and seeing what their feedback is. This was in anticipating what we are going to do for setting goals at this juncture. We had an actual workshop last week that we were preparing for this, which was phenomenal. I want to take a moment to thank my staff, Jerry and Renee. They did a fantastic job getting grassroots feedback from our community, putting it together and putting it into a form that's organized that we could present it to you today. We all have our personal preferences. Some of mine include bike trails. You've heard me say that a few times, sidewalks, quality of life. But there were things that the community had brought forth in my workshop that some of them were surprising, and some of them did support my preconceived notions of what the community wanted, which gives power to some of the things we're going to talk about today. Diving right in, I'm going to slow down because I think I'm talking a little too fast. Okay, we have 10 different topics that we organized our town hall in. People added the topics, they put comments in there and very specific things and some general things, so I'll go through each one of them. I'll start with parks. Some of the feedback that we've gotten throughout the year, and particularly from the workshop, includes, number one is the tree ordinance. We'd like to go ahead and go through and expedite that. That's been, I think, for a year ago, we talked about the tree ordinance. It was supposed to have something coming up in the summer, and I know these things take time, so whatever we could do to expedite that. I'd also, as that comes through, I'd like to have at least an opportunity for a workshop before that even gets presented to the commission so that we could get more feedback from my community and the community at large. I know they've had that before, but as we're going to vote on it, I'd like it as much input as we can. Lauderdale trails, as I mentioned, biking, I personally think that we could do a lot better with biking, and that might be a big commitment. That and sidewalks are two of the big things that might cost money.
Did you notice going out to the Prospect Lake project how Tamarack had installed these amazing bike lanes on the main thoroughfares? I know.
We can too. We can too. And it might be working with the county.
I was embarrassed. I thought good for them.
No, it's not saying that can be us. That will be us.
Yes.
Okay. So Lauderdale Trail funding. Here's the topic. I do want to reinforce that my community over and over again does want to keep the trees on Las Olas Boulevard. That's a topic that will be coming up in the future, but that's one of the things that came up in our goal setting.
What's next steps there?
No, that's coming down. We have time on that. The trees on Las Olas.
No, but I'm saying the whole project. What's the next steps that you guys are doing?
Staff is finalizing the procurement negotiations so that we can award a contract to start the design. We're going to do 2 designs up to 30%.
Right.
One with trees, one without trees.
Okay.
Well, one with the existing trees and one with the alternative
the trees on the.
Oh no.
One with trees on the median.
No. They're both going to widen the sidewalk. One's going to have more trees on the sidewalk with pedestrians, and one's going to have trees or at least landscaping in the median, preserving the median. And both of them are going to end up having trees. And the other thing under parks, and this is actually was brought up in a great idea, is. I would love to see the NCIP program reinstituted, parternering with the neighborhoods to, 50-50 matching sweat equity. There's a CBGI program as well as the business one.
NCIP.
And the NCIP, that's the one that we had done when I was president of the neighborhood. It was very popular, and I think maybe would not be an appetite to bring that back. I think that would be, John?
The problem we had with that was that, the whole concept with the NCIP, and you were a neighbor to Tracy, so you remember this, is it was supposed to be match dollars from the community.
Correct.
And then for communities that didn't have the dollars, they were supposed to put sweat equity into the projects. In certain circumstances, for example, in District 3, we were able to use HUD money, CDBG money, to make the match. The problem that we ran into in many of the neighborhoods throughout the city is that the neighborhood associations did not keep up with their obligations to maintain what we installed. So we did a lot of monument signs, for example, and nobody was maintaining the monument signs. So we were struggling with this year after year because then the city then had to absorb all these maintenance obligations because the neighborhoods never followed through, or I shouldn't say never, I would say over time it trailed off. So that's why we eventually discontinued the program, is because we simply weren't getting the partnership from the neighborhoods that was a cornerstone of that entire thing. So if we're going to go back to doing it, we need to reimagine how we do it, because maybe having that expectation for the communities was not realistic.
Okay, but some things like maybe having more of something in concrete for maintenance, or things that like speed humps or median improvements, things that might not be maintenance intensive or whatever it is. I think that it would be a nice idea to engage the community doing a match and sweat equity in some of these areas to do anything to improve the community.
So just to hear you outright, Commissioner, you would like us to look at that program, which was very community specific, and see if there's some way to offer that in another format so that it's sustainable and it works.
Right.
For some top priorities
Yeah.
that are specific to your local
Yeah.
community.
Like we're talking sidewalks. Some neighborhoods might not want them. Some neighborhoods might really want them. City might not have the funding for them. The neighborhood will say, "Listen, we'll match you to do whatever it is." We're so committed to playground equipment or turf or whatever the issue is. I mean, just looking into the feasibility of bringing it forward.
Let us brainstorm with the staff, and we'll bring some proposals.
Thank you so much. Development. The term "Don't New York my Florida." Here, I mean, everybody has these cute phrases. That's a cute one I heard.
We have a different interpretation of what that means.
Yeah,
Yes.
they have.
But
Those who say that haven't been to New York.
Yes. I'd really like to. We spoke about the tree ordinance, how just the P3 ordinance, trying to continue to move that along. Impact fees. I think that there's always a question of impact fees, and I think Chris is going to be meeting with our group anyway, our district, to see what we could do as far as impact fees relating to development. And the other thing is, we knew we have some traffic studies, maybe more comprehensive traffic studies, or the impact that traffic has on this development. I hear that over and over again in my community, and that was brought up again in my goal-setting workshop. Number 3 is public safety. We spoke about that 100 times, literally, I mean figuratively, I should say. It comes up again and again. Under, I don't know why it's public safety category, but people kept putting in sidewalks. Sidewalks, surprisingly, was a big topic that comes up again and again. As the mayor has spoken with us before in conference, we have to have a way of funding it. I know 2028 was the year that we were going to start with the new sidewalks. We got it. The crack opened a little with $500,000. This past year, we should start a little bit more. And your idea of maybe having a bond to have sidewalks and the bike lanes, maybe one or both together, something that we might want to explore this year. Public safety, number 3, is speed bumps. Everybody wants speed humps. I hear that over and over again. So with traffic, the engineer, and with where is Mr. Rogers? Well, Milos is here. No, we hear this all the time, and it's it does take time, it does take money, it does take studies, and all. I understand that people are frustrated with the amount of time some of these things take, but speed humps is one of the things that is coming up. I'm hearing that a lot, and that was brought up again in my workshop. Mr. Mayor, you had a question.
District 1 has speed dips.
We'll trade it.
It's much more cost effective and same.
Not only are my colleagues very committed to the city, but they are quite humorous as well, and I do appreciate that. Keeps us.
There are alternatives.
There are. Thank you. Okay. Bike.
No more death to roundabouts.
Bike lanes. It's a common thing. You hear me saying that again and again. Bypass. More bike lanes was. And here's something that's come up lately several times, and it came up in my workshop again, is street lights. I guess there's the maintenance of street lights. Greg, we spoke about that before, and you had addressed that with us. And not only maintenance, but I guess maybe addition of street lights. I know in your district, Pam, some areas want more, some don't want more. So it's neighborhood specific, but in general, just addressing streetlights. Number 4 is recycling, waste, and disposal. I didn't want to mention names, but I feel compelled to mention a few people who have actually risen up and gone above and beyond in the community, one of which is Tom Andrews. He had no idea I'm going to mention him today, but we have spoken several times about 2 things on this list. A trash ordinance and how to deal with hazardous waste and collection. In certain neighborhoods, one in particular, they have issues with the dumpsters aren't being closed, and they're open, and there might be personal waste, human waste, under the category of hazardous things. People might have blood on tissues that they've had, and it's dumped in things that aren't closed or aren't sealed properly. But it's a way to more uniformly deal with that with the city, and more funding for green your routine regarding waste disposal. But the hazardous waste aspect, dumpsters and things that are not being handled on a regular basis, maybe being more proactive on how we handle that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm halfway done. Infrastructure, addressing failing roads. John, you've mentioned that. And here's something that I think that we can do something about. It might cost a little bit of money, but I think that we have cleaning of drains and the stormwater drains once a year on average. It goes through there, and even if you have a great system, as we see after the April showers, that'll be the new term we use from now on, April showers. Even if you have great drains, if they're clogged, you will get flooding. If there's a way to increase the frequency of drainage to keep them open, so that way it proactively.
You mean increase the frequency of cleaning?
Cleaning of the drains. Cleaning of the drains.
And just so you know, there's about $24 million worth of effort being
From
done
FEMA
citywide,
From
correct,
FEMA, right.
to re-baseline all those paths. But we'll look into, once that's done, what would be a more appropriate cycle for making sure those drains are clean.
Thank you, Greg. And in my community, obviously, and Pam echoes this, infrastructure with flooding is a big concern of my neighborhood. Next one is seawalls and waterways. Getting there, guys. One of the things, the only other person I am going to mention, and I know he's going to be embarrassed and shoot me for mentioning his name, but Mike Lamberts has been very active in my community. He's mentioned this a while ago, and Greg, we've discussed having a chief waterway officer. We've heard waterway, and it comes to varying things. Noise ordinance is probably with noise on the waterway. Somebody that we could turn to because of the critical nature of waterway in our Venice of America, whose job it is to be the chief waterway officer, and it could cross varying boundaries of agencies. That could be a one-stop shop for anything like that. That was something I think is very, very worthwhile, and I am thinking that we should champion that. We talked about seawalls, but how could we aggressively seeking federal funding for seawalls was one of the questions that came up. Here's one that again, anybody with waterways is going to say, hey, I'm surprised it hasn't been brought up again. Dredging comes up a couple times. I know that we got a lot of money from the federal government for dredging Port Everglades, but now when it trickles down to the New River and some of the tributaries and the little canals, I've heard several neighbors of mine at some of these workshops say, listen, we need to do a project to put more funds and more resources into dredging because it's becoming a problem. So that's something that I think we should look at. Again, all could be dealt with under waterways. City Council dealing with county similar working with water management control canals. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, and I've rewritten this sentence a few times. I don't want to piss anybody off, but I don't want that. What do I give a hit? Shit, I'll piss them all off. No, one of the topics that came up. My staff is dying over that. So keep it clean. One of the things that came up a few times after the floods was the question of what anything upland that might have contributed to it, and how we work together inland and the waterways and some of the local municipalities and their canals, and just to be a little more proactive in how we deal with flooding upland that comes in here during storms and anticipating that. So how we do that, I'm sure that Greg and I have spoken, we do work with them, but maybe being more proactive or more aggressive. Affordable housing, only one thing to add from what everybody said is, I don't know if it would pay to have an affordable housing master plan for the city. Who said yes? I second the master plan. Oh, I hit one chord. One person in the room agrees with me, at least on something. Now I'm going to roll. Okay, homelessness, again, a comprehensive master plan. A comprehensive master plan. Oh, you did the check? Check must have cleared, right? Okay. And housing affordable master plan. Under the category of administration, this is just administrative things. This is not, I don't know if it's goal setting because there's no dollar amount. It's just how we do business. And some things that we're starting to work to already, more time to review some of the agenda items. Here's a request that came to you, and I don't know if it would or wouldn't work, and we could talk about this in conference, but one of the persons says some of these items that we know are going to have a lot of citizen participation. We know ahead of time some of the things that are going to be time-consuming, a lot of maybe flip around the order of the agenda. I mean, this is your call, but no, they said, could I bring it up to you? And I will, because I know you love the city and you love the residents. And I'll maybe think about changing the order and at the beginning of the meeting have some of the things that are going to take a lot of time, so that way people don't have to wait till, let's say, 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. So it's a thought, but it's your call, Mr. Mayor. I have to put a shout out to Neighborhood USA Conference 2026.
Can I just say something? Should I put the things that aren't going to take a lot of time first, so those people that are here for those things
We can talk
leave,
about that in
and then leave
conference.
the more time-consuming ones towards the end of the agenda?
Well, the only problem, I mean, I personally tend to do it the way we have it. You know, get the low-hanging fruit, boom, boom,
Right,
boom, boom, boom.
right.
That's what you do. But and it's something that the community says that, listen, we hang around all day and we don't get to talk, and the item doesn't come up till 10. It's either way, it's a balancing act. Some people are going to get pissed off if you make a right turn or a left turn. There's no right answer, but maybe give consideration to having some of these things early on. I don't know
the last
answer.
meeting we had, there happened to be 3 controversial
Correct,
items.
correct. So there's no way around
Right.
that one. But it's a thought. We might want to.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I
Mm.
wouldn't want to be stuck there all night too if I were waiting around. But we usually do the low hanging fruit first, like the consent agenda and all that, because those people shouldn't have to sit through items that there's a lot of public participation.
You could knock 10 things off the agenda in 5 minutes. Why not get that out the way? I know, and then you have a clear mind going forward. I realize it. And that's the way I think. But for all fairness, sometimes it might pay to take things out of order if people take
I
time
think we
off
have
work.
a couple of times we've
Right.
done that just to like in the conference meetings we certainly have done that. Take it out of order to get right to the why everybody is there kind of thing.
Thank you, and I thank you for that. I really do. I think we should have more workshops on the agenda. I mean, a lot of things go straight to conference, but I think our threshold for going for a workshop for some of these things that have come before us maybe should be a little lower so that we could workshop some of these things that are, especially technical things or things that have a lot of volume that are coming through. And the last thing, you spoke about water quality and noise ordinance. We spoke about that. And so I would once again just maybe one more workshop before we get the noise ordinance, and we could get that little fire under that so we could get that a little sooner rather than later. I know I usually don't speak a lot. I was a little voluminous from what you're expecting, but this is the conclusion of my comments, and I not only thank you and my staff and commissioners, but I thank everybody that participated in the conference at the workshop. Thank you, guys. It made my job very easy. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you.
Mayor, can I?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing that I missed on my notes. Carter Park funding, we need to keep that as a priority, understanding that we are searching for funding, but that is a priority that we would like added to the list, Carter Park funding.
That's for the to build the new building, I believe?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes, thank you.
So a couple of thoughts based on what Commissioner Sturman had to say and something that you said a little earlier as well, Mayor. So one of the things that I see being problematic is we have certain goals that conflict with each other. Okay? So, for example, Commissioner Sturman talked a lot about bike lanes.
Right.
And, we embarked on the Vision Zero initiative a number of years ago, and a lot of that had to do with going on road diets. And so we've taken lanes out of use, and we've turned them into bike lanes, which is wonderful.
Or sharrows.
Or sharrows. The problem that we've done, though, by doing that is we've now exacerbated congestion.
Right.
So if we want to move traffic, it gets very difficult. It conflicts directly with our ability to take lanes out of use and convert them to other purposes like bike lanes. The other one, and you mentioned Live Local Act and the impact that it has in some of our neighborhoods, but that stands in direct competition with the idea of increasing affordable housing throughout the city. So, this is a struggle we have. And I don't have an answer.
Well, that
All
was
I know is
intended
that-
to alleviate affordable housing problems, the Live Local Act.
Right, Live Local, yeah.
But at the same time, it's only going to exacerbate the Airbnb problem.
Well, it has the capacity to do that. Well, depending on which aspects of it. So when we look at Live Local and the ability to build taller, more dense projects by incorporating, a large number of affordable housing units.
Right.
So again, we keep running into this problem where a lot of the things that we're pursuing really are working in direct competition with each other. If we want to increase affordable housing, then we have to increase density. If we increase density, we increase congestion. If we increase congestion, then we have all these other problems. So I pointed out.
It is complicated, and and oftentimes the public doesn't often know the options that we're being handed by other governments, and these mandates that come down from Tallahassee or from the county are very difficult for a city to deal with. You're absolutely right. You point out some very good conflicts that are challenging. So
Well,
I
part
guess
of the reason I bring it up is
yes, you have
having been
answers.
No, but the reason I think it's important to bring that out there is having been on the other side of the table with staff and working with commissioners through the years, we give them marching orders that they're incapable of fulfilling because we're pushing them in two directions at the same time. So I just want us all to be cognizant of that when we say put out bike lanes, but then decrease traffic congestion and increase affordable housing, but let's not have any more density. So we put an unrealistic burden on staff when we ask them to tackle things that simply, as you point, work at cross purposes. So I just want us all to understand that.
Okay, I just want to piggyback to something that you had said much earlier, John. I know I didn't say it in my goal setting, but I think it goes without saying, but maybe I should say it. Now, when we look at what our goals are, cities exist for several things, but the primary reason is for the safety and security of our residents. And you had mentioned that, and I didn't put it in here specifically, but I think maybe I should say for goal setting to maintain that police and fire, and I see my colleagues here from police and from fire, you are the real reason the city exists, and that should always be maintained as our #1 priority in goal setting throughout the city. John, just to reinforce what you had said earlier.
So, as Thomas Hobbes said in his book, The Leviathan, life is nasty, brutish, and short. So we need some huge Leviathan government to maintain order amongst the huddled masses who are all going to kill each other if we don't. Anyway, from my political science years. Do you want to take a break before I begin, or we want to keep going? Okay.
How long are you going to be?
I have a list.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
all right. First of all, I too want to thank everybody for participating in a really collegial way that has been very instructive, and hopefully staff will be able to collate these ideas and come up with ways in which we're going to be able to accomplish some of these goals. And I know there'll be others that you'll come back to us and ask us about, whether we have any interest in pursuing ideas that you all have come up with. So, but I just want to say a couple things. Recently, there's been a lot of community feedback about what's going on in A1A, the streetscape project, as well as the Kinney Tunnel. And so for those watching this program today, I just want to reiterate that the reason why these two projects are happening at the same time is because we had thought that the tunnel would have been done by now. It was scheduled to have been done by now, and we have no idea when it's going to be finished. There's a lot of anger in our community because that project has been going on for over 2 years, and it's unfortunate that it has taken that long to happen. The Florida Department of Transportation continues to try to assure us that it's going to end soon, but every time I drive through that tunnel, I don't see a whole lot of activity going on, and so we really need to get that project done. Unfortunately, the A1A project is also taking place. That was intended to increase pedestrian safety along the sidewalk. We're moving trees, adding handicapped access. It's not just about beautification. It's about public safety, adding more lighting and so forth. So hopefully that will be done soon. Do we have a projected date in which that's intended to be completed?
About 1 more month.
Okay, 1 more month? Okay. So it'll be done hopefully before the tunnel is finished. So at least we know that there's a time certain in which that should be done by the end of February. So to John's point, everybody asks us to invest in infrastructure, and we're investing in infrastructure. There is an inconvenience in investing in infrastructure. There's road closures. There's going to be noise. There's going to be traffic problems. There's the flow of life will be interrupted because we're trying to make Fort Lauderdale resilient for the future, so it's one of the consequences. Unfortunately, we're doing our best to minimize those inconveniences and those interruptions, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do so. I know our staff works tirelessly to try to ensure that the impact to these infrastructure projects are minimized. So please be patient. Please bear with us, and we're doing our best to make Fort Lauderdale a resilient community. I want to thank city staff for this past year for a number of the accomplishments that had been elusive in previous years. For example, finally coming to terms with our police and fire departments, entering into contractual arrangements for the next several years. We had been without a contract with the unions for too long, and I think this past year, I just want to thank our staff, Greg, Susan, everybody else involved, for finally allowing those things to happen. I want to thank our union chiefs, who I think some are still sitting here, for your participation and your willingness to come to terms with the city, and that's very important because, as has been stated again and again, the most important part of any municipal government is the protection of its people, and I think it's important that we have a qualified and full complement of police and fire personnel to protect our citizens, and I think that's a long way. It goes a long way to have contracts in place that allow our city to move forward. We set a lot of infrastructure milestones in terms of stormwater and sewer and water, and I think we don't have to go into great detail, but certainly the groundbreaking this morning was a great milestone that we now reached in trying to rehabilitate our drinking water system, and in 42 months or less, they'll be able to have. It's not 2 years; it's 42 months in which we'll have the groundbreaking. The ribbon cutting. So the sooner the better. But it's certainly going to be an example of an infrastructure project that other cities around the country are going to emulate. And we're very proud of that. And we know that it's going to help ensure the safety and the availability of water for generations to come. We talked about sidewalks. Sidewalks are part of what these tax dollars are intended, not just Fort Lauderdale tax dollars, but MPO tax dollars, county tax dollars. We need to be able to tap into those resources because we have a big nut to crack with in terms of sidewalk installation. There's not one neighborhood that isn't clamoring for better sidewalks, for more sidewalks, and we can't do it on a piecemeal basis. We can't just put $500,000 into a sidewalk budget each year and expect that we're going to solve the problem. I think we've talked at a previous meeting about bonding out. First of all, identifying the scope of the project and then bonding it out. But not just bonding it out, but also trying to get complete street money from the MPO, trying to apply for the transportation tax money through the county, which also allows for sidewalks. These are the kinds of resources that we need to tap into instead of having to just burden our property owners with the cost of making this project successful. So I would ask our city staff to continue to pursue that. I think there's a general consensus on this commission that sidewalks are a priority, and hopefully we can really make that a #1 priority going forward. Too many kids I live near 2 schools, and I see the kids walking in the middle of the streets trying to get to and from school, people walking their dogs, walking their children. It's just an unsafe condition I think we can do better at. Let's talk about we see in Flagler Village, and now we're going to start to see it in more in District 3 as more and more projects are being built. The first floor, the zoning requires the first floor to be commercial space, but they become ghost towns, and we've got to come up with a program to help incentivize the developers to try to populate those first floor spaces in order to activate the streets. It's not safe, it's not economically advantageous to keep those ground floor spaces empty. Just putting exercise facilities in the first floor, I'm tired of people on their elliptical, as I drive by there. That's not what we intended when we zoned that for commercial space. So I've thrown out sometimes some ideas about tax abatements. I don't know the solution, but mine's better than mine can come up with opportunities to incentivize developers to try to see how we can populate and activate those first floor, ground floor spaces.
Mayor,
Yes,
if I
sir.
could just interrupt,
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah.
But that just reminded me of something. I think, the Fat Village project right into that area has basically been demolishing blocks. Many local artists were displaced. Artist studio space is very expensive. We are doing some things, and I'm hoping that we're going to do something else also in Sailboat Bend with the historic West Side Grade School. But just a thought, an idea. When you give artists an opportunity to have some space, and we've seen this with zero empty spaces, that whole concept, it does activate a building. It activates the street. People love to see artists work. People love to see, maybe just pop in and, purchase something. But just a thought, just to keep that on the menu.
We should talk to Zero Empty Spaces and see, can they come to Flagler Village? I'm sure they'd love to do that.
But just a thought going forward, if we're going to have all of these empty storefronts, just a way to activate it might be that type of an approach. That's all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. A lot of our streets are subpar, and I agree with you, Vice Mayor. But don't we have? Didn't we map out the city, and we have a master plan for how we're resurfacing streets around the city? Alan, do you want to talk to us a little bit about that? I want to know what's on that plan and who's next.
Mayor, I don't have the exact streets.
Right, I
but
get
what we
that.
do is we have mapped out all the streets based on the pavement condition index, and it tells you how bad the roads are. And every year, as we see how much funding is available within the budget, we'll program for repaving, mill and paving, the roads that are in the worst condition. And I can't remember the exact number. I think we get about $2 million a year that we put towards that. But at the same time that we're addressing those roads, every other road is degrading year by year. So we're not really getting ahead of it. I think we're at best keeping par.
Well, we have, we have to find a way to get ahead of the game. So in your budgeting, this is just throwing out ideas. Should be something that's a priority because again, it's safety. These roads it's ruining our cars, our alignment. It's if you hit a bump and you suddenly swerve to the side, this is all part of safety in our city, and I think it's important.
Mr. Mayor and members of the commission, Vice Mayor as well, I wanted to just say that BAB expressed interest in looking at sidewalks and looking at how we could accelerate the delivery of sidewalks. So there's going to be a parallel discussion in the next months, which aligns with your request.
Okay, great.
Could you have them look at bike lanes too?
Yes.
Again, non-vehicular transportation as a category.
Absolutely. And if there are other ideas as well that you would like BAB input, we can certainly bring that to them as well.
Okay, very good. Gun violence. We all know that despite our efforts to try to find ways to reduce gun violence in terms of restricting the possession of firearms from kids and people that shouldn't be holding guns. It's not working. Our hands are tied. The state legislature has decided it's up to them to make those decisions, and some of those decisions I don't really agree with. But I had a meeting a couple weeks ago. The mayor of Tallahassee happened to be in town, and we had an opportunity to meet. And he came up with some interesting ideas, which we can think about. But he says, while we can't restrict the possession of firearms, we could certainly initiate programs in teaching people how to use them. Education, also giving out free safety clips to people who possess them, especially homes that feel they need to have a gun in order for self-defense, putting safety devices on them, providing them free to families so that they at least have them, and then also offering free education on how to use them and how to maintain the safety of owning a firearm. He says he started in Tallahassee. He thinks that there's at least it brings community awareness about gun safety, even if it only benefits a few homes. At least the message is out there that the city is looking out to protect. Just an idea of trying to figure out how we can encourage gun safety and attitudes towards guns. Those deaths that occurred in your district, Vice Mayor, it was a sin that young kids had access to guns and were able to kill other kids. And how do we change the attitude about firearms and possession, right?
Yes, and just to share with that, I've been doing some due diligence and having conversations, and when I was saying about looking at opportunities for even funding, and City United is a national organization that helps with programming, strategizing, grassroots, and ways to combat the gun violence. And I don't want to use the word untraditional or non-traditional, but it's more of a grassroots plan where you are boots on the ground, citizens are working together to bring the opportunity for change through the demographics working together. So,
the
yes.
demographic has to work together.
Exactly, and that's the point.
It's social. It's social acceptance or non-acceptance of certain conduct. That's the only way you're going to change habits.
Exactly, and the point of that is the change is wanted, it's demanded, and we need direction to implement the right plan that fits our communities.
So maybe we should try to research what maybe some other communities are doing, and to start an education program, take it into the neighborhoods, take it into the schools. Gun possession and gun ownership is a right in America, but knowing how to properly use it and to educate people, like I said, maybe give safety devices to families that don't have them for their firearms to ensure that they don't go off accidentally and things like that. So, okay, thank you.
And if I could piggyback off what the mayor is saying, again, the organization that I've had some good conversation with is Cities United. If we can look into that.
City United?
Yes, to see if they, align with opportunity. We can have everyone check out to make sure that, everything is correct with us considering
Following
them
their
for that
best
opportunity.
practices of how they pursue
Yes.
it. Okay. Commissioner Sturman talked about recycling. I've mentioned this before, but I really think that we should look for ways to encourage commercial recycling. We only have residential recycling. When I think about the millions of bottles of beer or the cans, exactly, or the cans that get disposed of in these restaurants and nightclubs that just get put into the landfill or whatever, or however they dispose of them, when there's an opportunity to recycle at those commercial locations, we should think about ways of working with our vendors to see how we might be able to get those businesses to participate in commercial recycling. I think it would be an important way to add to our recycling footprint that we're trying to establish here in the city. Federal courthouse building. So as we all know, we're building a new federal courthouse, right? What do we want to do with the existing one? So the General Services Administration has approached us, and they're saying to us, okay, Fort Lauderdale, what do you want to do with the building? We think there is even a conversation where they may sell it to us for $1 or some nominal amount if we have a purpose for it, a public purpose for it. They're not going to sell it to us to raise it. They're going to sell it to us to repurpose it. So I put it out there not because I have an answer right now, but to think about it, right?
I've always thought that'd be a great museum.
Well, Dean, here's a question for you. You said
Or
sell
City
to
Hall?
us, not
Well,
to
I thought
level
about the
it.
City Hall, but with all the problems that, I apologize for. But yeah, we'd spend more money renovating.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
I don't
here's
know.
the
Anyway,
question. They had
yes, sir.
mold and rain issues and things like that. You know, when they said they'd sell it to us, we couldn't level it and do something else. We'd have to keep the building.
Right.
But they left because the building apparently was not keepable.
Well, they didn't want to make the investment. Okay. I mean, if you build a new, and also they needed to expand. They needed a bigger space.
And
Okay.
security issues.
Yeah, there's
related
mostly
to-
the security
Right.
issues. Yeah.
Because that building was built before Oklahoma City.
Okay, so
And so the security requirements of the judiciary have changed substantially since that building was built.
well, with the mold and rain and who knows asbestos, whatever, is it rehabilitatable? Is
It's
that a word?
rehabilitatable.
Take it back to the studs, basically.
Yeah, you take it back to the studs, and we'd have to rework some spaces. We'd have to add on to the building because there's no chamber space per se. But it's just something to think about. You know, put it out there because it's an iconic. It's kind of grown into our aesthetic. You know, it's an interesting looking building.
Is that a building where we could have commission meetings in? It says we could repurpose it that way?
Well, it's got how many thousand square feet is it, Greg? It's 100-something thousand.
300.
Yeah.
It's 300,000.
Yeah. It would
It's
more
a
than
big
meet our
building.
needs. And
So
we've
we
got the
can knock
parking
down
directly across
walls,
the
and we got
street.
parking.
We can make a city hall out
We
of
can
it.
make a city hall out of it. We can tear down a lot of the walls and create better office space. It's got a public plaza. We can get rid of the fountain. It never worked from day one. Day two. Okay. Anyway, just putting it out there. I'm conveying this information to you because the GSA has approached us, and I told Greg I want to bring it to us at this meeting. So I want everybody to think about it. There's no deadline or anything, but they do want us to think about how we might be able to repurpose. And they're very excited about their new federal building that they're building, but they're also keen on preserving the existing building. They'll make a deal with the city if the city is interested in it. Which to me, number one is we get the real estate, we get the building. Let's say it costs $50 million to rehabilitate it. It's certainly far cheaper than a new building.
Here's the question. What's the value of the actual footprint of the real estate itself? And if you're getting that for free, whatever you cost to rehabilitate it.
It's substantial.
So whatever you cost to rehabilitate it is going to be less than the real estate. So it might be something right. That's just not a bad thought.
And it's a good location. When people coming into the city, they'll identify that as a city hall. I mean, I just think that it's an opportunity that we've talked about it a couple years ago. I remember in some of the meetings that we had at the courthouse meetings, we did talk about it.
We talked about that during the task force meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
About the city potentially taking that site over,
Right.
and that was one of the options. So we talked about a couple of options. One was City Hall, the other was museum. There were a couple of things that got tossed around at the time because it's probably one of the better examples of brutalist architecture that's
not so brutal.
Not so brutal. Yeah, exactly.
And I know it would certainly appease a lot of our historic preservation folks.
Sure. And if I remember correctly, when I looked through the requirements for GSA, under the Code of Federal Regulations, the CFR, one of the things they have to take into consideration is the preservation of historic buildings. And that one, if you look back at all the press at the time it was done, that the architect and his work is very, very well known.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Okay.
So you said $1 or what was the offer from?
Well, there was no actual offer.
Did you try and get it down to 50 cents?
They said that they
Come on,
said
Dean, negotiate better.
Yeah, I will. They said they led us to believe that it would be a nominal amount if we wanted to make it a public space. Yeah.
By the way, Mayor, I have a magazine, Tropic Magazine, about 2 years ago. They did an amazing charrette of about 10, 12 pages where they asked a lot of local architects to reimagine that courthouse.
So there
and
were,
the
there were
ideas
three
were great.
actual ideas that came from that thing. But one of the ideas was to take the site next to it to add on to the building, which I don't think is available to us. First of all, it'd be too expensive, and we don't really need it. If we have 300,000 square feet, we don't really need it, right? So, but no, I agree with you. There was some interesting. They glassed in the plaza.
It was really nice.
It was nice.
Some good ideas, and actually the land just to the west was thought of as maybe you could build something higher and. Just connected somehow, or if someone was interested in that. I don't know exactly who the owner is.
I don't know if that's. I don't know if any entitlements have been assigned to that. I don't think so yet. I think they just that land's just been sitting there all these years.
And part of it was because building next to the courthouse was problematic because of security reasons.
Is that right?
Yeah, I remember we had discussions about that years ago because you're basically building anything that's looking down onto the courthouse, especially with that open plaza. You have witnesses and defendants crossing that open space. So there was a lot of concern about that.
And Greg, our DST has a tremendous file on that building because, believe it or not, there was a group that came here from all around the country a couple of years ago. I attended it. It was a whole day workshop. It was organized by, I forgot what school, up in northern Florida. And they brought people here from all over to tour the building, to learn about the history. And we have a good file on that building, an excellent file.
Yeah, I'll share that if you'd like with members of the commission so you can see that article.
And it's more than that, but there's a whole history and a file. And when that workshop was here, I know that History for Lauderdale had a big part of that workshop as well. It was a whole day.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to education. So I've been doing some research about how some other cities are addressing the gaps that some communities have been experiencing from the type of educational excellence that they would like to see in their communities, but had not been seeing from the school board. So one of those examples was Pembroke Pines. So the city manager and I went out to Pembroke Pines last year sometime, and we spoke with them. And apparently they started a charter school program many years ago. It was sort of an experiment to see what they could do, how the community would respond. And it turns out that it's now they've added many schools, many charter schools. It's now the place that parents want to send their children, and the grades, the excellence of the schools, far surpass any of the other public schools that are there. And now with this new approach to vouchers that the state legislature has enacted, it allows public funding to be used for the support and for the support of these charter schools. So, and just talking about Walker, as I did earlier, there's got to be a better way to educate the people in our community. Even investors, developers. One of the top three things they ask about public safety, they ask about education, and they ask about housing, affordable housing. Education is key to those that look to move into our area, and we can't always say that we have the best schools, right? Some of our schools are great. Fort Lauderdale High School continues to shine. Certainly our magnet schools, the magnet program at Sunrise Middle School continues to get A graded, but the rest of the school doesn't. So, this is an opportunity I think I would love to see. I don't know if how the rest of the commission feels about this, but certainly something we could explore, because I think that there are underserved areas of our city that could perhaps be best provided for through a charter school program, and I think we could do this in conjunction with this teachers union. I'm not trying to say we're not going to work with the teachers union. I think they would be eager to participate in a city-led project such as this, because they too feel frustrated with the Board of Education here. So something to think about, and I think that Fort Lauderdale is deserving of something like this. We certainly pay plenty of tax money into the school system, and I'd love to see some of it come out in a very positive way.
That extra space in the federal courthouse.
Yeah, you never know, right? Okay. We were supposed to have a joint meeting with the Charter Review Board, and I guess our schedules never really meshed. But a couple things I wanted to ask. A few years back, the City Commission voted on a number of things, like changing the election to November instead from March, and doing away with the primary, changing the limits on contributions, and there are probably some other issues too that we might want to consider. Is it time to revisit that? Want to think about, was it successful? Do we want to stay with the program? Has it worked out for the city? Some people say yes, some people say not really. But I thought maybe we could take a step back as a commission. I'd prefer to do it with the Charter Review Board, but if the Charter Review Board and the City Commission can't find their calendars to blend, at least we can start the process of having a conversation. We may decide that everything is great. And
are you talking about 4-year terms versus 3-year terms? Or
all of that.
November versus January,
March, yeah, all of that. Let's just put it on the table and see, has it worked out? Certainly having it in November, more people do vote for this election, but how many, like some people say, well, how many informed voters, vote in this election?
We also save hundreds of thousands of dollars by doing it in November.
We do. Okay, so those are the things those are considerations, but I think that.
I remember, Mayor, so I remember looking back at this, the turnout in our January and then
March,
was about 6%.
Well, it went up. It went up in 20. When I ran for mayor in 2018, it went up to 50.
You ran.
Yeah, right.
Brought out the voters, Mayor.
It went up.
Everybody showed up. It went up to 8%.
It was up to 15%.
Yeah. But no, typically.
But that was the most it had ever been.
Yeah,
right?
no. Typically, we'd run about 6 to 8% on those.
Right.
And we were looking at substantially greater numbers in the November election. So it does bring more people out.
It brings more people out. There's no doubt about that.
Which I think, personally. I think anytime you increase, voter participation, I think we're all better off. I think it serves our community better the more people that get involved in the process. To your point, they may not be quite as well informed as what we used to refer to as the super voters that turned out in January.
Right.
But I think democratizing the vote works to everybody's advantage.
Again, we may agree on that's the path to take. I just thought that we should have a conversation about that as well as other things in the charter that we would want to say to the Charter Review Board, please review that and get back to us. Because right now they're coming up with their own ideas, which are great. Because I've been to almost all the Charter Review meetings, and they have a number of things that they've been talking about, but a lot of them aren't really issues that I think that other parts of the community have been wanting to hear some response on. And if we could task them with discussing those other issues and then bringing it back to the commission, I think that might be helpful. It might give them more of a responsibility, and I think that they would appreciate being asked some of these questions.
Do you want to have added as a conference item coming up?
I'm sorry?
You want to just put it as a conference
Why
item?
don't we put it as a conference? We originally were supposed to have a joint thing, but it didn't happen.
We can start with that.
Why don't we do a conference item?
I was going to propose if you all want to give me a list that I could bring to the Charter Review Board so that they could.
But we should have a conversation.
Conference. We're doing a conference.
Right.
We'll put a
Because
conference
I think
item.
If we're going to have any commission recommendations to the board, then we ought to have at least a general consensus.
Yeah. I don't want
rather than individual suggestions.
Right.
If we have individual suggestions, I think we can communicate that to our representatives on the board. But I think if we want a commission directive one, I like your idea of having a conference discussion on it.
We'll place on next conference.
Okay, or whenever we have time.
One
February.
question.
Yeah.
How long have we been under the when we went from April to November?
2020.
This 2020. So this is brand new. So
Yes,
we're just
brand new.
basically
It's brand new, yep.
in a
When you
small
ran,
term.
well, actually, you did
did the special
you did a
election,
special election,
right.
but when we ran, when
the mayor and I ran in 2018, it was the primary and then a March election in
right.
2018, and then it was changed for the 2020
it was
election.
3 years.
Okay.
And
I
our
remember
second
being
terms were
3.
shortened, actually.
Yeah, they were shortened by a couple months.
Second
yes.
term, our
We
second terms were
cheated out on
short.
our
Our
first
second terms were shortened,
But you can't extend them.
and there you go. But if I could just add one thing to that conversation.
Yes, sir.
The only thing I'd like to get some clarification, because I've been getting different information on this. If we do stay with November, and I'm actually in favor of that, one thing I think we should look at is, some cities have it where, if you don't get 50%, there's a runoff. We don't have that. And you could have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 candidates. You can win with 20%, 30%. That's something I think we should look at. But then again, I hear conflicting things about state statutes. I hear that we can't do it. But then I think you could actually look at what other cities do.
The county does it.
But what they do is they actually have that election in August, which is strange, and then the runoff is in November. I don't know how this works, but I'm just saying that that's the only drawback that I've heard from folks, that if we stay in November, they'd like to see if there's a way that we could make it that to actually get elected, you have to have 50%.
Sort of like the judge races. I mean, the judge is different, but we have.
Well, the county commission they have a primary, and then they have a runoff.
Well, there's partisan. It's a primary.
Oh,
Democrat,
that's
Republican, so it's a
true.
little
It's
different. But with us,
That's
if we have
true.
more than 2, you could, like the judges, we could have, if there's 3 or more, you could have the
They don't
first
win-
round.
I think, don't they have to win by plurality only? I think,
Right, no, but what you could do is the first round, you could have a runoff.
Right.
And then in November, you have.
So can we research that?
It needs to be researched, because I keep hearing that there's a state statute that doesn't allow us to do that if our election is in November. I keep hearing
So,
that.
Tom,
but,
if you could research that for us, that would be helpful.
and I think it might have come up before, but I don't know.
I don't remember.
I don't either.
And I'm curious as to how much more that would cost us.
If we had a
If
primary.
we have the primary, because you said that there's an additional.
It's about 300,000, because
No.
then we have to run our own election,
Election.
No,
as opposed
but-
to piggybacking on
But
the
you might run your own election, but the workers are there, the poll places are there. I mean, it's all. I mean,
Oh, he's saying if you do it in August,
you do it.
you do it when the supervisor's already set up.
Correct.
Right.
So
Well-
it's not considered a separate.
Right.
That's what, but it wouldn't work for us like the old way with the January primary or
Where you
February
kick it back,
primary
you'd have to
and
kick
then
it forward.
March.
Right.
Right.
You'd have to
Yeah.
kick it forward.
But I think it's worth looking
Just
at.
something to think about.
What
Just
the
something to-
supervisor of election does is they look at the cost and they apportion it among all the participating municipalities in
Right.
those individual elections. And then there's also the cost of the extra pages that have to be printed and so forth, and mailings that have to be done. So there can be additional cost to it that can be, as we found out with our March elections, can be substantial.
I'm sure there are, but I would think it's not going to be the same number as March because, again, the buildings and the workers on the day of the election are there anyway. So it will be more, but I think it's going to be a lot.
Because now you've got to have all the poll workers for your precincts in your city, so they're not going to be there in August, right? If you
Well, they
have-
will
if
be
you have
for
election,
judges.
they're-
They will be for
they
judges. Yeah.
And for the primary.
Yeah, for the primary for
So
the
they're going to be there
county,
anyway
yeah.
for that
They
actual
will
election.
be.
Yeah.
All right, something. I just throw it out there, just in case we want to refine our process.
Are we still trying to have a joint meeting? I know that it's interesting because most boards and committees, they clamor to have a joint meeting with the commission. Charter revision, it's like kicking and screaming. Are we actually working on that, or?
Well, we tried, and our schedules just couldn't seem to blend. So if we can, why don't we just start our own initiative, and then, as John said, if we come to some conclusion, we can then defer to the advisory board to get back to us with their own recommendations.
And maybe one day we'll blend.
Maybe one day we'll
Okay.
blend. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Two last things. Homelessness, of course, is the top of everyone's agenda. I just wanted to report that this past week we had a meeting, meaning myself and the city manager, with the chief judge. It was at his request to start a conversation regarding how we can try to use the court system to bring homeless people into the system where they can be assigned social services for mental illness, for drug and alcohol rehabilitation. Right now, if let's say you're arrested, you bring you're charged, you're booked, and then you're released upon your own recognizance, and we never see them again. And and it's a revolving door, and we're not helping them, and we're not helping the city in trying to find ways to work themselves out of the homeless situation. So Tom, our city attorney, is going to set up another meeting with our city prosecutor to see how we may find a way where we can navigate them through our community court system, take them from this state court system, navigate them through our community court system. So you take them from the first appearance judge, and the first appearance judge says you must go through the community court, and then the community court has all the social services sitting in the room, and hopefully part of their release requirements is to participate in a rehabilitation program. So we're hopeful that might be a path, at least to start pulling down some of the homeless numbers, and so I just wanted to report that to everybody. I also want, Mr. City Manager, I want us to be committed that we're going to work with the Sheriff's Department in the next 90 days, get a meeting and try to get a program together on the discharge proceedings with regard to the jail. We talked about it, and now it's a new year, so let's see what we can do to capture the sheriff's attention. And I know it's been difficult, but let's see if we can capture the sheriff's attention and get this program involved. You all know what I'm talking about. This is where a person's arrested in another city. They're brought to the county jail. The county jail is in Fort Lauderdale. When they get discharged, they're left on their own to walk the streets of Fort Lauderdale, and that's why our population continues to increase.
And brought to the same exact scenario with the hospital too.
And I was just going to get into that. So the hospital district has also indicated a willingness to help us in that regard, and that too needs to be a priority over the next 90 days to get some kind of program. We met with Shane Strum last year, started the conversation, it died, but we now need to resurrect that communication. So absolutely correct. Facilitate that? Okay, good. Lastly, and I know we have maybe mixed feelings on this, but transportation is important in South Florida, and certainly trying to find new ways to get people off the main roads is going to be important. And from the very beginning, I have been an advocate of the commuter rail service and participated in those discussions since they started. But I truly want the commission to allow the city to continue to focus on trying to find a viable way to achieve a tunnel alternative to make this happen. As you know, BDO came back to us, came back with a completely different concept that reduced the price, reduced the size. They're now talking with members of the county commission. I think we can make it happen. I think we can make it happen. I was speaking with U.S. Department of Transportation officials this week. They're eager to have us apply for funds for the tunnel. They're not keen on funding a bridge. So we have an opportunity here, folks, that so the resolution that the commission passed was for a tunnel, but if it's not viable, then a bridge. Well, we're going to make it viable, and we're going to make it happen. And I just want you to know that one of the advocates that LSN Partners, who are people that have been working with us, we haven't really paid them. They've been doing it as a volunteer basis. George Platt, who is one of the principals of LSN Partners, they just hired the 3 top people that we've been dealing with at U.S. Department of Transportation. They have now no longer with the department. They now work for LSN Partners. So they want to help us in navigating our application to making sure that we can get the funding that we need in order to make this locally preferred alternative a viable option. I just want everyone to know that. So so with that, I think I covered everything. Okay. Sorry to keep you so long, but
3:59.
Okay. Do you need a motion to extend?
Well, motion to adjourn.
No, well,
I think the city manager wants to talk.
Yeah, Laura's going to describe a little bit about the process now and what we're going to do now
Okay.
with all of your inputs.
So
in 3 minutes.
Yeah. So essentially, usually this is when we would break for lunch and staff goes and works. But since we had lunch,
We'll see in a
early
couple of months, Laura.
in a normal workshop, but we probably 15 to 20 minutes we need to try to present back to you all of those things with
Why don't we do this? Why don't we
Okay.
do it at another time?
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
want to rush you.
Bring it back
Okay.
in conference meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Bring it back at conference. That works.
Bring it
Okay.
back at conference.
Sure.
Take your
I don't
time.
want. Yeah, I don't want to
It's gonna take
minimize
a
your
bunch.
minimize. I don't want to minimize your.
We could do
your-
that.
To
Okay.
coalesce all this and,
That-
and
We could do that. We'll let it
Yeah, yeah.
simmer.
Okay.
Bring it back.
We have a whole year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
So.
relax. A whole year.
another
Just
really
take
nice
it easy.
book like this.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
I
Great.
have
So
to tell you,
that
this
works.
is
By the way, you
great.
did a great job.
This is
This is
great. You
amazing.
did a
This
great
really
job.
is, yeah,
It's
phenomenal.
easy to read, and
Absolutely
I didn't
love
like all the results, but
Yeah,
next time, can you do it so we can like?
Yeah, the city
Canada.
manager gets all the credit. He really, had a vision of like setting the context in a really strong way
Good
this year.
employee you
So
are. I
yeah,
like that.
no, it's
It's
true.
all my bosses.
No, this
All right, don't go
wasn't. This
anywhere.
wasn't here before. This was
Okay.
the video, and this
All right.
was his
All right,
idea.
so we'll put this
thank
on.
you.
So if
for
we
that,
go
yeah.
on conference, we're going to make it. We're going to make sure that we don't have a lot of things on conference. So we have like an hour or so, maybe an hour and a half or so of time to devote to this, because it's going to be very, very important as we start to structure the basis for our next budget, which is really what this is all about. So now, does any member of the commission want to add to anything that they've said, that something they heard that they want to add on to? This is your opportunity to do so. No, you're good?
I'm good. I was just saying I want to hear it now. I don't want to wait till later, but
Well, they need
But
time to formulate.
I
the-
will digress. But I was excited to hear the feedback.
But you hang back and then let us all know how it
yes,
works.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. But I,
You can report back to us at the conference.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Greg, do you want to add anything? Are you good?
No, it's a pleasure to do this, and we're gonna make sure we get back to you promptly, and encourage everyone out there to engage with us, and also be part of Tuesday's conversation, where we share tools that we use to stay engaged and be on the know-how of what we're doing to develop the budget. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. No. Okay. Oh, what?
Very briefly. I just want to reemphasize what Commissioner Sturman said about streetlights. We're not talking about anything new. We're talking about maintenance of existing streetlights. Streetlights are out. Get new bulbs. Put them in. That needs to be in the budget.
Okay.
okay.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Percent of the streetlights, though.
Yeah, small room.
We're
You
gonna
want
go
here?
into that room with what?